Hello to YouTube, as Brian calls it. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us live today. I don't know who's here, and it's another early show. Maybe some people do other things with their family or whatever on a Sunday afternoon, but Brian and I are all ready to go. 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. Josh, I believe, is in, so that's what we got. Brian's chewing right now. Brian, why don't you say hello with food in your mouth?
Hello.
Okay. So can I start the show? Or I don't understand also, Brian, I've never heard of this before. It's only you in all of podcasting. You have an appointment scheduled. Do you go to appointments? I feel like I'm getting deja vu. I feel like I've asked this before. Do you walk into appointments eating toast and and slurping noodles?
Yeah.
What? Okay. You would be a very interesting coworker. I'd like to see what that would be like if in an office job.
I think I'm a very good coworker.
You'd be the guy walking into the meeting at 1:03 when the meeting's scheduled at 1, eat with a coffee, and I guess you don't drink coffee. You don't soil your body with that stuff, but drinking whatever, some organic juice in one hand and your tofu toast in the other.
So you just take every minor thing you know about me and take it to the extreme.
Would you if you got hired at my company, would your first order of business be to send us company-wide email recommending that we get rid of our microwave and only use stovetops to heat up our lunches?
It's not a recommend. I don't recommend that anybody lives within a microwave.
If I bought you a microwave, would you take it, or would you be ugh, it ruins the aesthetic of my home?
I don't know where I'd put it.
In the kitchen.
Yeah, but where in the kitchen?
I don't know. I mean, okay, I can't. I guess so. It sounds like you're saying you don't want, because I'm making you the offer right now, live for the people watching the video. I'm going to buy you a microwave if you want it. You could send me the link on Amazon to which microwave you want. It'll show up to your house in 2 days. I don't mean to do an ad for Amazon here, but they are very fast.
Okay, I'll talk to my wife and we'll see. We'll see if we want a microwave.
It would make me so happy. I don't know why. It shouldn't. I shouldn't care, but it would.
Well, I think the assumption is that I don't have a microwave because I'm afraid of what it does to the food, or some.
Not even I'll bet you it's even more it's not even you're afraid of what it does to the food. You're just more just heat doesn't taste as good unless it's done more naturally, how the cavemen did it.
The truth is that Josie never had a microwave in any of the places she lived before we lived together. Mm-hmm. And when we did start living together, I was like, "Oh, are we going to get a microwave?" And she's like, "No, I never needed one." And I said, "Okay."
And that's now, your thing now. It's your cute couple thing.
Just don't need it.
I mean, who does, right?
Sometimes it takes a little longer to get the food, but and anticipation, it makes it all the more delicious.
Yeah, you also were the guy who used to tell me all the time how you don't need a cell phone. You were the last one on board. I don't need it. What do I need it for? I guess you don't need anything, right?
Well, you don't need a cell phone if all your friends have cell phones.
We don't need to do this podcast. Our lives would probably still go on, but here we are.
Let's not go too far here.
All right, let's get started. Should we put that into the show? Actually, I feel like this is our best banter.
If you can put it, you choose.
I'll put it at the end, maybe.
Probably not at the beginning.
Okay, we leave people for the first time. Oh, this is a hockey podcast. Okay, I'm gonna start. Are you done chewing? I think I heard a burp there. Okay.
I did not burp.
Yes! Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the best fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys who own Eric Karlsson and their keeper pools. I am your host, Elon Dubrovsky, here for a mid-January matinee recording episode with my good friend, the forecasting fanatic, the rotisserie robot, the poobah of prognostication, the connoisseur of conjecture, the prima donna of prophecy himself, Brian Calm.
It's such an honor to be introduced by you, Elon, the Sultan of Segway, the Maestro on the mic, the Yo-Yo Ma of the yes. I've got to come up with an I one for intro. I was thinking the Imam of the intro, but I don't know. Okay, the Imam of the intro. We're really happy to be here for another episode of Keeping Karlsson. We have a special guest coming up in a bit that Elon's going to tell you about in a second. But first off, I just want to recognize today's January 13th, which is a very, one of the most important dates in hockey for two reasons. First, it's Connor McDavid's birthday. Second, it's Elon Dubrovsky's birthday. Happy birthday, Elon. Woo! Your age will soon be Connor McDavid's jersey number.
Man.
How's that for a good jocular ribbing?
Wait, so say it again. What was that about his jersey? I was opening up my Red Bull here. I didn't catch that.
Because you need it, because you're so old now.
What's the jersey number thing? I missed
I
it.
said your age is approaching Connor McDavid's jersey number.
Oh, 97 is that?
Yeah.
Oh, what a good joke.
You're
Okay.
almost there.
Almost. Connor McDavid is fantastic. I'm proud to share a birthday with this kid, but we've got a great show today. We're not going to be talking about Connor McDavid. We're actually going to go the other direction. We're going to talk about a few players that maybe we don't usually talk about. We're going to go with some of the no-name. I don't want to say no-name. That's mean. Like the lesser discussed guys that might be worth considering for your fantasy rosters going into the stretch. Of course, before we get into that, let me mention two things. First, like you said, Brian, we're going to have a special guest joining us in around an hour. We've got Ryan Bolta, the content producer for TSN That's Hockey. That's right. We got the content producer from That's Hockey.
Not just the content producer, the lead content producer.
Oh, Brian, I just was messaging with him and he said just say the content producer.
Oh, my bad. You can cut that out.
Okay. Okay. And Ryan is going to be sharing some tips and trends that can help you win fantasy. This guy knows his stuff and he knows how to put out content. So I'm really interested to see how this goes. I'm really excited to talk to him. He's a friend of a friend, soon to become a friend of mine and yours and all of you, the listeners. Okay, Brian, second of all, we are presented by DobberHockey.com, the top fantasy hockey website out there. If you're playing fantasy hockey and you're in a league and you're trying to go for the championship, you need to be going to the site every day just to get all the updates, great articles, player profiles on the tools section. I use it to prep this show. I love looking at the line combinations, the starting goalies, like everything you need is there. If you're not using it, you're probably not doing as well as you can be in your league. So check it out, DobberHockey.com. But okay, Brian, let's get started. And like I said, I want to talk about some lesser known players who people either drafted super late and are like surprised with, or people that might even still be available in your league's free agent pools. And now's the time where you could get those gems, those second half gems. Remember last year, Nolan Patrick did nothing for the first half of the season. Travis Konechny did nothing. I don't know why I just came up with two flyers, but then second half exploded. Nick Bjugstad did nothing and then exploded in the second half. So maybe one of these guys will be discussed on this show and we're going to let you know about them before they take off. Or maybe we'll talk about these guys and then in a couple months be like, who is that guy? I can't believe we brought him up on the podcast. I don't even think we did. But I want to start in Nashville with someone who's somewhat known, okay? Matthias Ekholm, who I can't believe we haven't brought up yet this season. He's been a solid own all the way through. Like he definitely has deserved to be on people's fantasy teams. Though lately, he's been so hot that he's gone from solid to gas. This guy has sublimated. Matthias Ekholm is so hot. He's on a 4-game streak of getting... Did you move the page while I was talking? I lost my spot.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That was my fault.
I didn't know that was possible. Okay.
Well, I typed at the top.
Oh, don't do that.
It was an accident.
All right. Let me go. Okay. No more cuts for the rest of the way. Where was I?
That was really good, though.
He is so hot. Ekholm was on a 5-game point streak going into today. He's actually playing Carolina right now as we speak. It was a 12:30 start time. We started recording at 1. And he also has 4 straight 2-point games. So that gives him 3 goals and 9 assists for 12 points in his last 8 games. 12 points in 8 games for defenseman on Nashville, who's not even like on the top power play. Matthias Ekholm, how is this happening? And also that brings his season total to 34 points in 45 games. That's a 62-point pace, Brian. What did we project for him? Like 30? 35. This guy's never had more than 35 points in a season. It's been a 5-year career. He has like the same average ice time as last season and even less power play time than last season. So Brian, like what's going on? Is this just a crazy blip or are we seeing a new gear from Ekholm that he'll be able to somewhat maintain for the rest of the season?
Matthias Ekholm does this every so often, and when he does, we do take the opportunity to celebrate that it's happening because Ekholm is mostly an unheralded defensive stud who never really gets the credit he should from being one of the less flashy names on one of the best core D groups in the league over in Nashville. We also sell... Oh, my doorbell just rang. Can you hang on?
Oh man, this episode's a mess.
Sorry.
Can't even get off the ground here.
I gotta make sure it's not Josie. Just a sec, okay?
You don't give your wife a key to the house? Oh, he's gonna go check. So let's see here. It's already 1-0 for the Hurricanes over the Predators. Pekka Rinne continuing to struggle. I don't know what. Okay, 1 goal against on 10 shots. I guess that's a bit alarmist. Sebastian Aho scored. So far, it says no. Don't you hate that when this? I don't know if I like it or not. Like, I'd be curious to know. Tweet at us if you're watching this, or let me know in the chat room. Like, when it shows the player who scored and it says unassisted, but it actually wasn't unassisted, but they're still like collecting the assists. I'm trying to decide. Like, would I rather they just wait and like show it when they know the full story, or is there some value in knowing the goal score? I'd almost rather it just say. It shouldn't say unassisted. At least it should say like for the assist section, it should say like undetermined yet or TBD. So like, because sometimes people do score a goal. Maybe like right now, I don't even know. Did he score an unassisted goal, or is it going to come? So what do I have to be like a chump here, refreshing the page to see if Furland or Teravainen or whoever assisted on this goal? It still says unassisted. So okay, that's one rant for the day. Is there any other games going on now that we could talk about? No. Well, I'm just going to keep talking because I guess that's my job right now. I made an ad in my Cupful League just recently, just today. Okay, good. Brian's back. I was going to talk about how I added Paul Stasny, even though I didn't need him, but I didn't want. But anyways, okay. Now that Brian's back, I can get
we
into
need
that.
A supercut of all the times where we've tried to entertain the crowd when one of us leaves.
Let us know. Let me know if you want me to tell my story about Paul Stasny later on. Maybe Brian will leave again at some point, and I'll have the chance. Okay. So, do you remember where you were?
I'm just going to start over.
Okay. Here we go. Start the whole show over.
Okay. Okay. Yak home. Okay. Whew, I'm out of breath.
It's not easy.
Mattias Ekholm does this every so often, and when he does, we take the opportunity to mention how he is a mostly unheralded defensive stud who never really gets the credit he should because he's one of the less flashy names in that great core D group in Nashville. He's a big part of that top four, though. And so when he does get points and we get a chance to say Mattias Ekholm is great, we take it. But we also mention that you should never really expect his runs of production to continue. It's pretty much always been a one-off event when Mattias Ekholm starts putting up points, with him topping out on the season at essentially a 35-point pace for the most part. So what's happening? Oh, my God. Whew.
You actually do seem out of breath. Like,
I'm out of breath.
You just like stop and like start that whole thing over. That was like kind of uncomfortable to listen to with you like taking a breath every word.
I really raced.
Oh my God.
Man, we were off to such
take
a good
second, take a breath. It's my birthday today. I was hoping to do some things, not edit a show all day. And we got Ryan joining us in 45 minutes now. I'd like to get through like one team. Ugh.
It's not my fault.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well,
it was someone collecting a rent check for my landlord.
You don't have to always. Are you the type of person that answers your phone every time someone calls? Just send it to voicemail.
Well, no, but I look at the window. I see if I can see who's there, and if it's something that looks like I might need to like. So I saw a car in the driveway that I recognized.
Okay. They could leave a note. What is this unannounced visit? What is it, Kramer?
He probably would have rang the bell again. He had an appointment to come pick up a check, but it wasn't from me.
Okay, go ahead.
I get what that Kramer shows up unannounced. Is that a Seinfeld reference?
Okay, can we go?
Yeah.
Mattias Ekholm, he always does it. I'm gonna call you on that, by the way. Of course. Okay, anyway, go ahead. I did say that already. The 35 point was his highest ever. Yeah. I don't know if you caught that. Okay, go ahead.
I did. So I don't know if you listened to what I said.
I did. Okay, go. I've heard it 3 times.
Mattias Ekholm is the kind of guy who does this every so often, and when he does, we take the opportunity to mention how Ekholm is one of the more unheralded defensive defensemen in the league. He just never really gets the credit for what he does because he's one of the least flashy names in that core group of Nashville's top 4 defensive group. We also mention when Mattias Ekholm does this, aside from saying like good for Mattias Ekholm, that's awesome. We also say that, well, Elon, like you said, he's a 35-point player for the most part. You can never expect these sorts of runs of production to continue for him. So why do we think that this time? Where's the proof that this isn't the difference, that this is not going to be the moment everything changes for Mattias Ekholm? Well, Ekholm has been on the ice for 11 5-on-5 goals in his last 7 games. For contrast, he'd been on the ice for 26 goals in his previous 34 games. So he's on the ice for more goals than usual during this nice run, and scoring more goals than usual while he's on the ice because his team has carried an on-ice shooting percentage near 15%. They've scored on 11 out of 74 5-on-5 shots, and they've scored on 11 out of 74 Nashville 5-on-5 shots on goal, have beaten the other goalie since December 31st. And Ekholm, of those 11 goals, he's been in on 9 of them, getting points. So this is a guy who generally gets a point on 3 out of every 10 goals scored while he's on the ice. Now he's got 9 on the last 11. So I'm not believing that all of a sudden Mattias Ekholm is like this super crucial and essential component to his team's offense. He is a great example of a guy who is just straight up hot, though, and will absolutely cool down. If you were fortunate enough to add Ekholm for the bulk of this run, you should be looking around to D-poor teams in your league and seeing what return you can pull back in a sell high situation. I should mention that like Mattias Ekholm is not peanuts. Like he's still a talented player, still reasonably rosterable in reasonably deep leagues. But just keep in mind that unless he gets into a more consistent offensive role, and Elon, you mentioned his deployment hasn't changed at all, you can only expect him to top out around 35 points.
Right. When you say 35 points, obviously this season he's probably going to end with more just because he's had this amazing run. But pace moving forward, we're going to expect around a 35-point guy. You're giving all these reasons why what he's doing is unsustainable. So yeah, good advice. If you've got Ekholm right now, now's the time to sell high. Maybe we're as we discussed last week, I don't know if going for like Gostisbehere is still worthwhile, but I think it probably is if you want to really take a shot on someone who could break out in the second half, or you could go for someone a little more reliable, like, I don't know, Jared Spurgeon. I don't know. I'm just trying to throw out some names here for you. Tweet at us if you have any suggestions of players you might want to try to trade Mattias Ekholm for. Since we're on Nashville, this guy's obviously not a nobody. Filip Forsberg, he returned from his upper body injury. Filip Forsberg, he returned from his upper body injury on Monday, right back to the top line with Arvidsson and Johansson, and back to the top power play, though different from last year. They went back to a 3 forward, 2 defenseman top power play, so that great top line, and then also Roman Josi and Ryan Ellis have been on the top power play unit. So anyways, Forsberg, nothing versus the Leafs on Monday, and he had nothing versus Columbus on Thursday, but he did have 2 goals and 7 shots versus Chicago on Wednesday, and he's now up to 24 points in 29 games on the season. I don't really think there's like a take I can ask you for here. Like Filip Forsberg, he's just as good as we always thought he would be. His owners are getting a huge boost, getting him back in their lineups. The guy I want to talk to you about on Nashville is actually Pekka Rinne, because he's been kind of weak lately. Have you noticed? He only has 1 quality start in his last 6 games, according to the Frozen Tool over at DobberHockey.com. The other 5 games out of his last 6 were all sub .903 save percentage games, including a 4-3 overtime loss to Nashville on Friday. And meanwhile, UC Saros is trending in the opposite direction. He's got 4 straight quality starts, though that's like over almost a month. Like Rinne just keeps getting in the net. I know Saros was supposed to play a game earlier this week, but then he was ill. But still, I feel like I wonder if in the second half, maybe Saros is going to start getting some more games and Rinne is going to get scaled back a bit because Saros is doing so well. Rinne is doing so poorly. Plus, Rinne is not a young guy. I wonder if now's the time to either, I don't know, like sell high or think of other things to do with Pekka Rinne, and also to maybe get UC Saros if he's still available in free agency.
Rinne was pulled against Ottawa about a month ago, but then he got the next 6 starts, during which he went 1-5-0 with a .903 save percentage. And as you said, Elon, that .903 save percentage has essentially carried through to today, as Rinne has still started 4 of the last 6, well, 4 of the last 7, because Saros is starting today, Sunday's game. Rinne started a back-to-back, though, also, so it seems like Nashville still has he started both ends of the back-to-back, just to be clear. So Nashville seems to still have a lot of faith in him, except Rinne looked really bad in like all of these outings, except for an 18-save shutout on the road at Toronto. So we've yet to see the Predators really try to turn away from Rinne and towards Saros. But if you're a Rinne owner, you should be looking over your shoulder. Like, I don't know there's action to take just yet, but maybe what you need to do is begin thinking about what your contingency plan might be should Pekka Rinne not be able to recover his game soon and begin ceding more starts to UC Saros. That said, like, I want to be clear, I don't know that Rinne owners really need to be panicking just yet. He ranks 3rd in the league in 5-on-5 goals saved above average per 60 minutes this season. It's been a really great campaign for Pekka Rinne, even with recent struggles. Most of those struggles for Rinne coming on the penalty kill. He is getting crushed. He's given up 14 goals against on the last 59 shots he's faced on the penalty kill. That dates back to November 25th. He has a .763 save percentage shorthanded in that time, and that includes letting in 3 of the last 5 shorthanded shots he's faced. I have to imagine that Nashville is aware of this and knows that such a poor penalty kill save percentage is not sustainable, and that they're going to keep throwing Pekka Rinne in the crease until they're absolutely certain he's got nothing to offer or can't rebound on the penalty kill, because honestly, his even strength numbers are still holding up quite well over the season. And today, I was just looking. Oh no, now he started 5 of 7. I thought Saros was starting today, Sunday, but it's Rinne, and he's given up 2 goals on 12 shots, both at even strength. So that's not great.
Yeah, and also I wonder, but like obviously you could tell me his numbers for the whole season. Like we're all very well aware that he had a great start to the season. He's been great all the way until this recent cold stretch. This is the stretch that I'm concerned about, but I like how you're explaining it, that you think that it has mainly to do with a lot of shorthanded goals against, which are the types of goals against that are really hard for any goalie to stop. And you'd have to think that maybe Nashville could just try to take fewer penalties. Maybe that could even things out, though. Like you say, 2 even strength goals against today. I don't know. Like, yeah, like you say, like there's not too much to do with Rinne. If you could trade him for, I don't even know, maybe you don't, but usually Saros, if he was available in free agency, now would be the time that I'd be looking for him, because he's been so good lately, and I feel like Nashville should give him a shot. Also, I still remember that Rinne kind of choked in the playoffs last year, and it wasn't the first time, so I wonder if they have anything in the back of their heads thinking like, I don't know, like if we want to ride this guy to the playoffs. But I'm sure they do. That's like a stupid speculation that's not going to come true.
Anyone who owns Pekka Rinne should already have had some sort of contingency plan in place. Like if you drafted him and you've gotten really great numbers from him in the first half of the season, you always need to be on edge owning him because of his age, because of Saros. So just if you forgot that you had to have a plan B, now's a good time to start remembering.
Yeah, okay, so let's go to another team and back to this plan of talking about lesser known names. You know, we did start with Ekholm, and then, you know, we segue to talk about Rinne and Philip Forsberg, I should say. He's not related to Peter Forsberg, is he?
No.
Okay, yeah, I didn't think so, but yeah, they're both really good. Let's go to Winnipeg. Okay, who's this Brandon Tanev character? Currently, he's riding a 4-game point streak, playing in the bottom 6 in Winnipeg, going into today's game versus the Ducks. So we'll see if he's going to be able to keep this streak going. Plus, Tanev has been filling some other categories as well, especially hits. He has 135 hits over 44 games. That's over 3 hits per game, and he threw 10 hits in a single game a couple weeks ago against Pittsburgh. He's also averaging over a block a game, which is really great for a forward. He took 5 shots on Friday versus Detroit. They usually he's around, you know, less than 2 shots. But yeah, like he's not playing on the greatest of lines. He's playing with Matthew Perreault and Adam Lowry, and he's not on either power play unit. So like, how is Brandon Tanev getting all these points? First of all, like also, who the heck is Brandon Tanev? And do you think there's any chance he could somewhat keep this up? Like, could he at least be, let's say, a half point per game guy to supplement all of these great hits that make him valuable in a bankers league? You know, like, does he, I don't know, can he approach the goodness that is Tom Wilson?
Unlike Philip Forsberg, Brandon Tanev has an NHL relation. He's Chris Tanev's younger brother, and he was undrafted out of college, and now he's actually 27 years old. He was a part-time NHLer before this year, not for very long, though. He's only gotten 22 points in 150. He's only had 22 points in 115 games heading into this season, but this season, Tanev is seeing his time on ice rise steadily since playing his first pro season with Winnipeg at age 25 just a couple years ago, as I said, but his time on ice still has not risen to the point that we can consider Brandon Tanev a top 6 forward. He has increased his shot attempt and shot rates this year, which is good, but again, not so good that we really need to be watching for this guy. He's still averaging fewer than 2 shots per game on the year, though that 5-shot effort you mentioned is encouraging, if rare so far. Tanev's hits are valuable if those count in your format, but really the point ceiling remains pretty low for him. He reminds me of another Winnipeg Jet in recent memory, Adam Lowry, who seemed to be able to produce from the middle 6 every so often, and that made him worth a stream in deeper leagues, but not someone that could ever reliably put up a point or benefit from good deployment. So to me, that makes Brandon Tanev remaining as... So to me, that means Brandon Tanev remains a stream. I know it may seem weird, but in a non-hits league, I'm not going to be that interested in him, like maybe for one more game, and then if he gets a point, it's another game. But to me, his first pointless game will be the last day he spends on my roster.
Yeah, I guess he's like one of these guys. He's on a team that scores a lot of goals, and so right now he's getting in on at least 1 per game. Like that guy on Tampa, Matthew Joseph, I think he was on a good run. It was just like everyone on that team was getting points. Right now it's really working out for Tanev. I agree with you. Though, like if you are in a league that counts hits, grab him now and ride him for a little while. And even if he has 1 pointless game, maybe hold on for another. And also, I don't know about what's going to happen in this top 6. Like if you recall, Nikolai Ehlers is injured, and Jack Roslovic has been playing with Laine and Little, but like that line hasn't really been doing anything. Roslovic has done nothing. Patrick Laine Laine still is cold. So maybe at some point they try moving things around, and who knows if Brandon Tanev gets a shot playing with either like a little Laine line or maybe even on replacing Kyle Connor. Kyle Connor goes down to, help shake up that line. Like, I don't know, but we'll see what happens. Probably not going to be a long-term guy to own, but definitely a guy you should have on your radar right now. By the way, Brian, since we're on Winnipeg, did you realize that Jacob Trouba has been manning the top power play of the last few games? Super quiet. Like, no one was mentioning this to us on the Facebook group. So maybe I'm even reminding some people, like, we thought that it was going to be Josh Morrissey who'd have that job when Dustin Byfuglien got injured, but no, it's been Trouba lately, and it's working. Like, he's got 3 power play points in his last 4 games, 7 points overall in his last 6 games, including a goal and 2 assist performance versus Colorado on Tuesday. So Trouba is doing really well right now, and he's on the top power play. Meanwhile, Josh Morrissey is pointless in his last couple games, only has 4 points in his last 10, so he's really slowed down. I thought that he was the guy to jump on. I was like, must own Josh Morrissey when Dustin Byfuglien got injured. Right now, I guess I'm actually going to ask you, should people be dropping Morrissey, especially if they could swap him for Trouba?
If you can swap Josh Morrissey for Jacob Trouba, I think you do. Like, Jacob Trouba quarterbacking the top power play unit, Elon, is your dream come true. So you must be really happy about it. And we're still a couple weeks away from the next Dustin Byfuglien date, probably. Like, we heard that he's out for about 4 weeks. We'll get a reassessment around the All-Star break. So in the meantime, the Jets power play 1 quarterback has to be rostered, whether it's Trouba or Morrissey. And right now, it's Jacob Trouba. So go get him, even if it means dropping Josh Morrissey. You can pick a backup if they trade spots again.
Yeah, but though, let's say most leagues Jacob Trouba is owned, right? Like, he's very hard to get in fantasy because everyone loves him, just like me. But Josh Morrissey, what do you think about him in general? Like, is he droppable at this point for just like some stream? Brandon Tanev is playing today, so you could get an extra game on your week. Would you be willing to let go of Josh Morrissey now that he's off the top power play?
Yeah, I would, unless it's like a really deep defensive league where defensemen are very difficult to come by. But assuming that that's not the case, Josh Morrissey is more just like a streamable peripheral helper if he's not quarterbacking the top power play unit.
Very interesting. Okay, so we'll have to wait and see how things shake out. Maybe give it another week. They could always put Morrissey back there, and then you'll really be kicking yourself. Okay, one more thing about the Jets. I promise I'll do fewer players per team, but there's so many interesting things to talk about. Just like with Nashville, we've got a goalie situation starting to arise. Like, Connor Hellebuck has kind of been struggling lately. He only has 2 games with a greater than .906 save percentage in his last 7. He's still got 3 wins in that span because Jets, they're so good. They score so many goals. But with this bad run, Hellebuck is down to a .908 save percentage on the season, which is a far cry from his .924 save percentage last year, and a farther cry from backup Laurent Brossois' .939 save percentage on the season. Now, that's only in 11 games, very small sample size, but Brossois has been great, especially in each of his last 6 starts. He's won all of them, but unfortunately, those 6 starts, that goes all the way back to November 24th. So Brossois' starts are few and far between, but hey, he won his game versus Detroit on Friday, and that was actually his first start since December 22nd. So they're really, spacing these games out, but he's doing so well. Like, what does this guy need to do to get in the net more? Like, Hellebuck's not doing so well. Brossois has been amazing. I'm curious to know if you think that maybe something will change there. I'd be curious actually to hear you compare the 2 situations in Winnipeg and Nashville. Like, who would you rather have between Rinne and Hellebuck, and who would you rather have between Saros and Brossois if you wanted to own a backup?
Well, to your question as to what Brossois needs to do to get into the Winnipeg net more often, he needs to steal Hellebuck's jersey, pads, and mask so that Winnipeg thinks he's Connor and throws him in night after night after night. There is a really interesting contrast to make between Hellebuck's season so far and Rinne, because Rinne, I was talking about how he's been really good at 5-on-5, which is a better indicator of how well a goalie's playing, and really rough on the penalty kill, which is not a good indicator, but can still sink your save percentage anyway. Hellebuck is actually the inverse. He's performing really poorly at 5-on-5 this year, ranked amongst guys like Craig Anderson and Cam Talbot in 5-on-5 goals saved above average per 60 minutes. He's playing sub-replacement level, or sub-average, I should say. But also, unlike Rinne, Hellebuck is saving his save percentage. Like, he has a bad one, but it's still as good as it is because he is outperforming expectations while short-handed. But also, unlike Pekka Rinne, I don't think Connor Hellebuck has much reason to be worried. He's not older or dealing with a long injury history, nor is he being backed up by the apparent organizational next choice to be the goalie once he moves on from Winnipeg, whereas Rinne has Saros to contend with. So I don't know that if you are a Hellebuck owner, like, you want him to play better, but I don't know you need to worry about him losing a whole lot of starts. Brossoit has been great for sure in his starts and really is a must-add anytime he gets the starting nod, but I don't think he's as likely to pick up more starts from Hellebuck than Saros is from Rinne. I'm just not sure there's anything Brossoit can do, as Winnipeg has really seemed to declare Hellebuck as the be-all, end-all for their goalie situation.
Yeah, it sounds like the only thing that Brossoit should get is like maybe he should do some research and present to the team that, hey, if you rest your starting goalie more, you have a better chance of him playing well in the playoffs. And then maybe that could get him some starts. But yeah, he's been great. And yeah, he was a great stream for anyone who grabbed him on Friday, picked up the, I guess, easy win over Detroit, as easy as they get. Okay, Brian, since we're talking about goalies, let's go now talk about a guy that I'm ready to take a risk. I'm ready to go all in on. I'm ready to stake my reputation and tell people that I think you should, right now, if you need a goalie, or even if not, pause the podcast, after you finish the sentence, of course. Pause the podcast, go check your free agency, and see if Jordan Binnington is available, because it's looking to me like he's taken the number one job. Because it's looking to me like he's taken the job as the number one goalie on the St. Louis Blues. He's been so good lately. His first NHL start was just back on Monday. So when I say lately, I literally mean this past week. He shut out the Flyers, stopping 25. Jake Allen then got the start on Tuesday and did Jake Allen things. He let him 3 goals on 17 shots in a loss to Dallas. So St. Louis really doing a good job of suppressing shots, but Jake Allen totally blew it. Craig Berube then made the smart move to give Binnington the next start on Thursday versus the Habs, and he was rewarded 28 saves on 29 shot performance in a 4-1 win. And then Binnington got the net again yesterday, stopped 21 of 22 in a win over Dallas. So, Binnington is clearly outplaying Jake Allen. And okay, here are some thoughts that make me really think that Binnington is going to get the net moving forward. And who knows, maybe in a month from now, Allen's getting all the starts, but I just don't think it's going to happen. First of all, Allen's been terrible pretty much all year, and it's not the first year he's been terrible. At some point, this leash has to run out. Secondly, the Blues are actually starting to look like the good team we were expecting them to be going into the season. This isn't a team that's not a playoff team that might as well play Allen and see if he can get his game back. They've been, like I said, some really nice low shot against counts, especially since Alex Pietrangelo has returned. I don't know if that's related. Ryan O'Reilly has been the point per game player that, we all thought he maybe could be, or at least a 70+ point player. He's been fantastic, such a great acquisition. Tarasenko's starting to heat up a bit. He had a goal yesterday, up to 4 points in his last 5 games. And if you look on paper, this team looks pretty deep. And now they're finally getting some goaltending. And also, as bad as the Blues have been this season, these 3 wins in their last 4 games, thanks to Binnington in part, that brings them within 5 points of a wild card spot and 8 points of the 3rd spot in the Central Division. So they are definitely not out of this. There's a lot of hockey yet to be played. Plus, the teams that they're chasing are teams like Dallas and Colorado, teams that are struggling right now. All of this makes me think that the Blues have every incentive to let Allen sit and put all their eggs in the Binnington basket. I feel like at this point, they know what they're going to get from Jake Allen. It's not very good. So I think that Binnington becomes a must-own in fantasy at this point. He's potentially a starting goalie on what I think is a potentially good team fighting for a playoff spot. So, Brian, I'm ready for you to get that cold water bucket out from under your desk and cool me off, because I've got a hot take right now. I'm going to predict right here that the Blues are going to make the playoffs, and Binnington is going to be their starting goalie that leads them there. A lot like, I guess, Keith Kincaid last year for New Jersey, though of course that was more Taylor Hall leading them, but Kincaid was solid. I'm not saying Binnington's going to be amazing all the way through, but I think they have enough players that they can get there and have Binnington as a solid piece back there. I think people should be going to grab him. I feel like also, I guess before you answer that, and I know I'm throwing a lot at you here, I'd love to get your thoughts on if it's time for people to consider dropping Jake Allen. Maybe he's similar to a Mike Smith at this point, a guy who maybe we thought could be good at some point, but at this point, I don't know, he kind of sucks, and I think the other goalie is going to get more games.
One take at a time here, Elon. You gave me your take about St. Louis making the playoffs with Binnington and told me to get out my bucket of cold water. But Elon, I love that take. St. Louis, believe it or not, has actually been one of the best teams in the league in expected goals and shot attempt share over the last couple weeks. They've also been getting sunk by a really unfortunate PDO in that same stretch. So combination of poor shooting percentage and poor save percentage. Although we know with Binnington and net, the save percentage has not been poor. This sort of ascendance in their expected goals share and shot attempt share started a little bit before Alex Pietrangelo came back. But of course, having him in the lineup is much more helpful than not for the Blues. Here's the thing with St. Louis. They look to me like they could be a playoff bubble team if things broke half right for them. But again, they have been just destroyed all season by brutal goaltending. They own the league's 5th worst 5-on-5 save percentage, ranked similarly in goals against per 60, but their expected goals against per 60 is middle of the pack. All this suggests to me that St. Louis hasn't been getting quite what they deserve for some time now. Not that they deserve to be a top team or a playoff shoo-in, but they at least deserve a fighting chance at one of the last playoff spots. And maybe Binnington can be the guy to lead them there. Who is Jordan Binnington? Well, he was a third-round pick, 88th overall of the Blues way back in 2011. He's now 25, but up until this year, Binnington had just one game of NHL action, and it came 3 years ago when he gave up a goal on 4 shots and 13 minutes of relief work for Brian Elliott. That was in a game against Carolina. Elon, in the 2015-16 season, do you know who Carolina's winning goalie was?
Who their winning goalie was? Like, who won the most games?
No, who won that game? The one NHL game that Jordan Binnington had played to date.
No, I don't know.
Eddie Lack. How do you
your favorite guy?
Yeah, come on. We all have a mental catalog of all of Eddie Lack's glorious wins. That was one of them. Anyway, since coming back, since that one NHL game 3 years ago, Binnington has actually been a pretty good goalie in the AHL. He actually played for Boston's AHL affiliate last year because the Blues were sharing 2 other AHL teams. They were between AHL teams because Vegas took their Chicago affiliate and they were going to move to San Antonio, but Colorado had already an agreement with San Antonio. So anyway, this is a long story, but the Blues were sharing both San Antonio and Chicago of the AHL with other NHL teams. There's no room for Binnington. So Boston had room with their AHL teams. They said, sure, Binnington can play here. And that was a great move for the Providence Bruins because Binnington put up the second best save percentage in the AHL last year, a .926 over 28 games. Before you get too pumped about it, the other guys in the top 5, Garrett Sparks, Michael Hutchinson, Eddie Pasquale, Aiden Hill. So like no really proven names, and some names that we have a good sense aren't going to pan out in the NHL. But could Binnington pan out in the NHL? He was also playing pretty well this year for San Antonio, .927 over 16 games in the minors. So why not? Like it looks like Jake Allen could be up to, sorry, I'm hearing audio, Elon. Okay, we're good. Okay. So why not? It sure looks like Jake Allen isn't going to be up to the task. Like, let's all move on from him, Elon. I think you're right. I think it is like a Mike Smith situation, although we haven't seen Binnington succeed for quite as long as Riddick has in Calgary, so it's not analogous yet. But let's see how far St. Louis can ride Binnington and if he can bring them to the deserved territory of playoff bubble team. The one caveat after all this optimism that I'm going to deliver is that Jordan Binnington and the Blues, their last 3 opponents have not been so strong. It's been Dallas, Montreal, and Philadelphia, not known for their goal scoring. They've got some big tests coming up. So let's check in like a week or 2 and see how Binnington and the Blues fare against tougher competition. If they can hang in the race through then, and Binnington still looks like at least like an average-ish NHL goalie, the Blues have a very real chance.
Okay, yeah. So I like it. You didn't take out the cold water bucket. This is very exciting, but you do make a good point, and it was also made on our Facebook group. Oh, I'm blanking on the name. It was one of our smart people. I think it might have been Ben saying, yeah, like these have been kind of easy games. Let's see how he does against harder teams. So it'll be very interesting to watch for the rest of this week. And it might even be really interesting to go watch a game from Jordan Binnington live. And if you happen to be in the St. Louis area, you could go see a game of them live using our friends and our sponsors of this week's episode, which are our friends over at SeatGeek, the ticket buying site. It's like the best place to go. SeatGeek, you guys all know it. We've been talking about it all season long. You know how getting tickets online can be so complicated. There's hundreds of sites, varying levels of reliability. It's hard to know who to trust, but that's why SeatGeek is the way to go. They pull millions of tickets into one place. You can easily find the seats you want for a price you're willing to play. Actually, St. Louis is on a road trip right now, so you could go see them at the Capitals or at the Islanders. Brian, here's a fun game for you. Okay, we should maybe do this every week when we're talking about SeatGeek. I'm seeing that St. Louis is going to have a back-to-back with the Nashville Predators, a home-and-home series on February 9th and February 10th. Which game do you think is more expensive to see? Oh, one sec. Hey, Ryan.
How's it going, guys?
Thanks for joining.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Was just
no problem.
that everything was working okay. Came in early.
Yeah, sounds great. Okay, so I guess can you just mute yourself now, and then we'll get you in 20 minutes?
Yeah, sorry with that.
No, it's awesome. Great, thanks.
Trying to figure out how to do that on my phone.
Here, I could just do it, actually. All done. And then I can unmute you when it's time, or I think you could do it. Okay, so Brian, I'll just keep going now. All right, I've got a fun game for us to play. Maybe this could be a new thing we do every time we're talking about SeatGeek. So I'm taking a look at the St. Louis Blues tickets that are available for purchase. They've actually got a home-and-home series against the Nashville Predators on February 9th and February 10th. One game in St. Louis, one game in Nashville. Which one do you think is more expensive? The game in Nashville or the game in St. Louis? What's your bet?
I would go Nashville. It seems like it should be the hotter ticket.
Nashville, like being in Nashville, you think it's more expensive than being in St. Louis?
Yeah.
Okay, you're right. How'd you know? Actually, I would have thought St. Louis. I guess Nashville.
What team would you pay more to see?
Oh, I see. It's more about who they're playing against. No, but in that case, wouldn't the Predators fans not be wanting to pay money to see the Blues? Wouldn't it be the Blues fans wanting to pay to see the Predators?
No, like if your home team is doing really well, you're much more likely to want to pay money to see them. Like how are we on such different wavelengths here?
Okay, no, you're right, Brian. What a smart guy. Yeah, but still very cheap prices, right? Less than $100, less than $50 if you're going to St. Louis. And yeah, you could go see these games or any other game or any other thing you want. You just use the app and you browse around and you see what's going on. So that's with SeatGeek. And Brian, our listeners can actually get a little discount just by being listeners of our show. So why don't you tell them about that?
Yeah, our listeners get $10 off their first SeatGeek purchase. All you need to do, download the SeatGeek app, enter the promo code KEEPING today, and then you can see just how easy and helpful it is to buy your tickets on SeatGeek. Again, that's promo code KEEPING for $10 off your first SeatGeek purchase, because SeatGeek, life's an event. We have the tickets.
They have the tickets, yeah. Good for them. They have a big warehouse with all the tickets. That's what I've heard. Brian, okay, next, let's talk about another player who, I'm going to be honest, I don't think I had heard of him maybe 2 weeks ago. I don't exactly know when I first heard the name Connor Garland, but right now, he is at the top of my mind. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, Garland has been playing right wing for the Arizona Coyotes. He was on a line with Alex Galchenyuk and Nick Cousins yesterday. Obviously, Galchenyuk's the more exciting player to be playing with. And he's also been on the top power play for the last 5 games, playing with Keller and Galchenyuk, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and Jacob Chikrin. And should I maybe mention that Garland scored 2 power play goals yesterday versus Edmonton, and that extended his goal scoring streak to 4 games. He's now up to 10 points in 17 games on the season, and he's rising fast. Like, Arizona plays Calgary tonight. I'll be curious to see if Garland can get another point then. And of course, the reason he's getting this top power play time, or one key reason, is that Nick Schmaltz is injured. We talked about him being injured last week, but word came out since then that he's actually going to be out for the rest of the season with a lower body injury. So really rough news for Schmaltz, who was doing so well. You know, he was really having a great career resurgence, if you could say so, for such a young player coming to Arizona. But maybe his loss is Connor Garland's gain, because this guy's on the top power play and he's killing it right now. So Brian, like, who the heck is this guy, Connor Garland? Do you think he could stick on the top power play? Is he worth a stream at least for next week to see? If you grab him on Wednesday, Arizona's got a really nice schedule. They play Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. So you could grab him on Wednesday and get 3 games on off days.
Connor Garland, unconfirmed whether or not he's a distant relative of Judy, but he is a former 5th round pick, 123rd overall of the Arizona Coyotes from back in 2015. And he's from a place called Scituate, Massachusetts. It's the word situate, but there's a C after the S. Situate. Very interesting city name. Yeah.
How much longer are you going to talk about this?
I don't know. I saw you unmute yourself and figured you would just be hurrying me along. Okay, Connor Garland, 22 years old, 5'10", 165 pounds, which is like almost my size.
Yeah, I weigh more than that.
Yeah, so it's really interesting to see him succeeding. Like, that's a classic 5th round pick who kind of pans out. The thing is that he was not really trending to be an offensive producer in the last 2 years that he spent in the AHL, just 41 points over 110 AHL games. This year, though, suddenly had 8 goals, 11 assists for 19 points in 20 games in the minors, and that earned him a call up to the big club. Now, Connor Garland is a Cy Young contender with 8 goals and 2 assists for 10 points in I wrote 17 games. That can't be right.
Yeah, that's right, man. 10 points in 17 games.
Okay, 10 points in 17 games. He has 5 goals on 33 shots at 5-on-5, 3 goals on 12 shots on the power play. 2 of those goals, by the way, last night on Saturday night, neither of them scored with a hockey stick. One of them scored off a skate that was considered not a distinct kicking motion. The other one off his face. Elon, did you see this highlight?
I did not. I don't know. How am I supposed to think about these 2 goals? I was like, this guy's hot with 2 goals. You're kind of making me think like he lucked into that. But hey, if you're on the top power play and pucks are being directed to the net, I guess you just got to get something in front of it and hope that it bounces off.
So that's it. So, and actually the other one was super. So the face one, he was just dumped in front of the net, like cross-checked, like flat on the ice. As he's getting up, Jordan Osterley from the point, like rips a wrister, and it goes, like, I think it was going in even if Garland's face wasn't there, so maybe Osterley's mad that Garland took the goal away from him with his face, but it went off Garland's face, bloodied him, and then still trickled into the net. It's a pretty great highlight, and I can say that because he was okay to come back and score this other weird goal where, again, another shot from the point, like, went over the net, hit the boards, like got a weird deflection to come back out in front of the net. Like Cam Talbot had no idea, neither did any of the Oilers defensemen. And Garland was just in the right place at the right time. Like he powered towards the net and was able to angle the gliding puck into a semi-open net. So a couple lucky goals for Connor Garland, but like you said, Elon, he has a chance to be in the right place at the right time, and he has 47 shots in the 17 games he's played. So we know he's at least trying to make things happen. Again, what really interested me here about Connor Garland is that we don't know, like every report or scouting report I've seen about Connor Garland is like, how, like he could look good on the 4th line. I just don't know that he's ever been given a shot to have this offensive deployment before. So we're going to wait and see what happens with it. Arizona must be happy that Garland is stepping up, at least in the short term, to make up for the loss of Nick Schmaltz and, well, the disappointment of the rest of their roster offensively.
Yeah, well, it's not even only Nick Schmaltz, right? Christian Dvorak is injured. Michael Grabner's injured. Like, at some point, someone like Connor Garland is going to get an opportunity, and he's running with it. And yeah, if you have an open spot, or if you want to try him out, like, get him on Wednesday next week. You don't have to grab him now, and then ride him for 3 games and see how he does. And by the way, Arizona is finally starting to win a couple games, and a lot of that also must go to Darcy Kemper finally seeming to have settled in. I think he's the starter now, Brian, at this point. Before we were talking about, is it Kemper, is it Aiden Hill, maybe Calvin Pickard once he comes back up from the minors, but Kemper's been playing a lot of games lately. He has 3 straight wins now after beating the Oilers yesterday. He's been over a .920 save percentage goalie over the past month, so that's over 9 games. You got to imagine Darcy Kemper, if he's still in free agency in your leagues, Brian, I know you're not the biggest fan, but I feel like even you are going to say that Kemper should probably be owned in the majority of fantasy leagues right now. Like, he seems to be the starter. Like, he seems to be playing well. Like, kind of what more can you want from a potential free agent goalie?
Well, I would want him to be outperforming his expected save percentage, even strength for starters, which he's not even close to doing.
But wait, is that on the season, or is that over the past 9 games?
I didn't isolate to just the last 9 games.
Let's say for sure he was bad before, but lately, over the past month, he's seems to have found a switch. Maybe he's one of these types of goalies that needs to kind of get consistent play in order to get on a roll. Is that possible?
So, I mean, he's only played 22 games. So 9 games, I think you can account for that here and still see that he's not even approaching his expected save percentage at even strength, and still disappointing. What you would also see is that Kemper has a .944 save percentage on the penalty kill, which is insane. Like, that should be closer to .880 or .885. So that bubble's going to burst. And when it does, so will your goalie rate stats if you're rostering Kemper. By the way, the Calvin Pickard update, .870 so far in 3 starts for Tucson of the AHL. So he's still working on his game. So Elon, I agree that Kemper appears to be the starter in Arizona, but he could be a bit of a paper tiger, and I would not want to get overly invested or comfortable with him.
That's fair. Okay, so let's say if you were deciding between Kemper and Jordan Binnington right now, I feel like Kemper is the more likely one to get more starts for the rest of the season, but I do kind of like the upside of Binnington and this Blues team better. Who would you take between the two?
I'll go Binnington.
All right. Yeah, me too. I think. Yeah, I'm very excited about Binnington and the Blues. But also, Kemper, yeah, he's not going to, win you your championship, but I feel like he's going to be a really serviceable guy, especially if he's your 3rd or 4th goalie. You're going to get a lot of games out of him, and hopefully this stretch will keep going for a little while if you add him. Let's go to Ottawa now. Obviously not an unknown player, but someone who is unknown to get a lot of points, or at least over the past 10 years or so. Bobby Ryan got an assist yesterday on a Ryan Dzingel goal, and that brought him to a 7-game point streak. Yeah, Bobby Ryan. And no, this isn't 2010. This is 2000. 2019, and Bobby Ryan is on a 17-game or on a 7-game point streak. I got too excited. Maybe in 10 games we'll be talking about a 17-game point streak with the way he's going. He's now up to 28 points in 43 games. That's a 53-point pace, and of course that's been steadily rising over these last 7 games. And even more impressive, Matt Duchene is out. He's like awaiting the birth of his child, just like you were away for 3 weeks or whatever. Like Duchene is now missing some games for the Sens, and so Bobby Ryan's been playing with like Ryan Dzingel and JG Pageau over the last couple of games. So it's not like he's playing with a real star on that line that we could just give all the credit to. It must be Bobby Ryan contributing somewhat. Though, by the way, speaking of Dzingel, he scored that goal yesterday, brought him to 8 points in his last 7 games, and he and Ryan have both been playing on the top power play with Stone, Brady Tkachuk, and I'm seeing Christian Wolanin as the defenseman on the top power play for the Sens yesterday. So like also who the heck is Christian Wolanin? Like what's going on with the Sens team? And how is it that there's all these no names doing stuff? Like Christian Wolanin has a 4-game point streak, or at least he did. It got stopped yesterday in the Sens loss, but it's not like he is doing nothing. So yeah, Brian, like I think I'm gonna like deploy my team ranking request for the week. You know, I'm allowed to do this once a week without you getting too mad at me, because there's all these Sens players that are probably available in free agency, and I'd be curious to know who you'd want to grab. And like I'm including forwards and defensemen here. Just like take like one of your leagues and imagine if you wanted to stream someone. They play Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, so you could get probably the Wednesday, Friday games because they're on off days. If you want to stream in a Sen, how would you rank the potentially available options of like Brady Tkachuk, Dzingel, Bobby Ryan, Christian Wolanin? I don't know if you want to throw another name into the mix, like Pageau, Chris Tierney. Like, how are you ranking all these Sens that aren't obviously Mark Stone and Matt Duchene?
Okay, so again, Elon, one take at a time, please. Let's go way back when you started talking about Bobby Ryan. Do you remember when earlier this week I sent you a text and I asked you your thoughts on whether I should add B. Ryan? And you just went ahead and assumed that I made a typo and was actually talking about Brian Rust and just calling him by his first name. Like, that's how far from consciousness Bobby Ryan was at that point, but he's been looking really good lately, both on the score sheet and on the ice. If you've been watching him play, he looks like he's got a little something extra these days, which is weird because he's had the opposite of extra for like most of the last several years now. I'm not sure what's gotten into Bobby Ryan or if it can last, but he should be rostered right now ahead of guys like Brandon Tanev, for example, at least in non-hits league. I should say Tanev. I'm going to get heat for Tanev. Christian Wolanin, he's the son of former NHL journeyman Craig Wolanin. I don't know if you remember him. He's a Senators defenseman prospect who has taken 10 shots over 8 games. He scored on 2 of them, was a 4th-round pick of Ottawa back in 2015. And I don't know, like he has some offensive pedigree. He had 35 points in 40 games in his last season at the University of North Dakota, which was the one season. Well, it was his last season. And then he left before his senior year to join Belleville, the Senators AHL affiliate. Now Wolanin has 18 points as a 23-year-old in 26 AHL games this season. And that, I guess, earned him the call-up. So there is some offensive history for Christian Wolanin. I'm curious to see if that can actually translate to the NHL. We should also shout him out for hanging in quite well in shot attempt share also, particularly given his plight having to be a defenseman for the Ottawa Senators. So that's my take on Wolanin. Like, maybe you might as well give him a shot. Like we were looking for Shabbat's replacement. It could very well be Wolanin. He's taken over from Lajoie over the last couple games on the top power play unit. Okay, now you wanted me to rank all the Senators. This was your last take.
It was more of a request than a take.
Oh, you need to say it again.
I feel like it was more of a request than a take. Not everything I say is a take, Brian.
I thought take was synonymous with sentence.
Okay, so yeah, give me a ranking here. Like all these guys might be available, even Brady Tkachuk because he's been so slow lately.
Yeah, except Brady Tkachuk played the most minutes he's played in a short while on Saturday night. He played 17 minutes and picked up 7 shots on goal. So anyone hanging on is probably going to hang on a little longer. If I had to pick today the Senator as I wanted to own most, the top group is obviously, I mean, it's really hard to distinguish between Bobby Ryan, Ryan Dzingel, and Brady Tkachuk. You could go with all 3 for different reasons. Bobby Ryan seems like he might pay the most immediate dividends. Ryan Dzingel seems like he might pay the most consistent dividends. And Brady Tkachuk might pay the best long-term dividends. Like, honestly, that's that's where I land. I don't see much of a difference in their production over the course of the rest of the year. I think I like Dzingel the most if I have to pick one guy and stick with him for the rest of the year, then Kachuk, then Ryan. But if I'm picking just for 1 week, I'm going Bobby Ryan. I should say Colin White would also be like the fourth person in this group, although he'd be last of the group, but he is injured for another week and a half. And on the periphery, if you're in a super deep league, Peugeot and Zach Smith, let's give them honorable mentions as guys who find themselves in the top 6 but have less inclination to produce over their career. You mentioned Chris Tierney, Elon. He keeps putting up points, but I see no reason why we should expect him to on a regular basis. Like, I considered adding him in a few leagues this week because of his schedule, and every time I looked at his numbers, I was just like, this guy's not going to do anything. And then, of course, he did. But I still maintain that, the logical choice is to not make any play for Chris Tierney.
Yeah, well, especially if you could get Bobby Ryan or Ryan Dzingel, who are also hot, and it seems like you think that's a lot more sustainable. And why not if you're on the top power play, being quarterbacked by Christian Wolanin? Okay, Brian, how about we talk about one more player, and then we're going to bring in our awesome guest, Ryan Bolta, who's going to tell us some tips and trends that can help you in fantasy. Really excited to get him on. But Brian, we got a couple minutes here, so I want to squeeze in like maybe the biggest no name. Is no name such a mean word? What's another word I could be using for this list of players that I feel like are less prominent than the general ones that we talk about?
Anonymous.
Well, they're not anonymous. That was
Forgotten.
Okay, let me give you another take, Brian, on... Oh, yeah, Forgotten's pretty good. Okay, so let's talk about Marcus Pettersson on the Penguins. This is a defenseman. He was actually traded for Daniel Sprong earlier in the season. That's how he got to the Penguins from the Ducks. He actually had a 5-game assist streak that was broken yesterday in the Penguins' loss to LA. By the way, Casey DeSmith was the goalie, so another game that DeSmith loses and makes Matt Murray more established as a starting goalie. But yeah, Marcus Pettersson... Who is this guy? Like, is he on your radar at all? Like, he's getting all these assists, but he's not like a bit highly used player. Like, he doesn't play a lot of minutes. Is this like a situation kind of like what we were saying about Tanev? You know, if you're on a team that scores a lot of goals, you're just bound to get in on points every once in a while?
I think that's essentially it. Although since coming to Pittsburgh in the deal that sent Daniel Sprong to Anaheim, Pettersson has seen an uptick in how he's been used, and he's also generating more offense in both in terms of points and shot attempts. But yeah, he's nobody to reach for unless you're in a pretty deep league, still just barely averaging above 1 shot per game. He's still 22, was a former second-round pick of the Ducks. So honestly, I don't know what he really projects out to be, but whatever it is, he's not going to realize a whole lot of potential buried where he is in the Pittsburgh lineup. Like you said, it's really just a function. He's around a lot of talented players, so he's going to pick up some secondary assists every so often.
Yeah, so maybe a good stream every once in a while. He's been, rising the ranks of the Yahoo's top added players, but yeah, not a guy to worry about. I wouldn't be picking him up. I'd be going for a defenseman who plays at least like 20 minutes a game, has a better chance to get points moving forward.
Oh, you need to say that again.
Which part?
For a person playing 20 minutes a game, but you might need to back up, because it was...
Okay, I'll just do the whole thing. Okay, then I'll just say one more thing, and then we're going to get Ryan on. Very excited. Okay. Yeah, I'm with you. Like, Pettersson isn't someone that I'm especially excited about. I know he was on this streak, but I feel like it's going to end now. He was rising the ranks on Yahoo for the most added players, so that's why I noticed him and thought I'd bring him up. But yeah, it's probably not going to keep going. There's other defensemen who I'd prefer that play more minutes. Since we're on the Pens, Brian, sad news about Patrick Hornqvist. Suffered another concussion, but good news, I guess, that he's apparently already skating and could be back soon. Or at least or is that good news? Like, maybe that's bad news that this guy's had 4 concussions in the past couple of seasons and he's still going to play soon. I wonder if that's maybe a flaw in the system, but who am I to judge? I'm not a doctor. That's probably also a topic for another podcast. Not really our bread and butter to discuss player health. By the way, also Zach Aston Reese is out long-term with an upper body injury. So with Hornqvist and ZAR out, Evgeny Malkin has been flanked by Tanner Pearson and Dominic Simone over the past couple games. And surprise, surprise, they've both been getting points. Tanner Pearson scored versus Florida on Tuesday, and he scored twice versus Anaheim on Friday. Nothing yesterday versus the Kings. Simone has 5 points in his last 6 games. The Penguins don't have a great schedule. Next week they play Tuesday, Friday, and Saturday. But, if someone's interested in getting a Penguin, I feel like you'd probably want to grab one of these guys while they're playing with Malkin, right? Is it just that simple?
Yeah, it is that simple. Anyone playing with Evgeny Malkin interests me. Keep in mind that Tanner Pearson has been playing with one of Malkin or Kessel since coming to Pittsburgh and not doing much with them. So be interested, but not like silly excited or anything. Dominic Simone also was taking turns with Sidney Crosby earlier in the year, so sort of the same thing. Although you can line up his biggest disappearances in production with the times when he wasn't in the top 6 and when he was just returning from injury. Like Simone has had a couple short runs of relevance this year with Sidney Crosby already, so I'm going to take Dominic Simone first if I'm streaming in Simone or Pearson, but Pearson may be like a good Friday stream in a pretty deep league.
Yeah, if you're playing with Malkin or Crosby, you're going to get points. That's just how it goes. That's how it's been going for years and years since we started doing this podcast. Okay, Brian, we are at the point now where I am very excited to bring in our guest for this episode, Ryan Bolta. He's a content producer for TSN That's Hockey, and he is going to share with us some tips and trends that can help you win fantasy. Brian, sorry. Oh, yeah, so maybe I should say, Ryan, are you there? Oh, maybe he's not there. Okay, so in that case...
Let's keep going.
Let's keep going. Ryan, let us know when you're there. I was going to say something actually about the did I just put an edit point there? I was going to say something about what you were just saying about oh yeah, I know what I was saying. I have a take. So actually I'm just going to go back to everything I said. Sorry everybody. Brian, I will point out that playing with Phil Kessel at even strength isn't that exciting. Like I feel like you just said like playing with Malkin or Kessel, and you sort of said as if it's almost the same thing. Like Kessel's fine at even strength, but he gets like almost like half of his points on the power play. I remember last year you were so excited about Derek Brassard because you were saying like at least he'll be able to play with Kessel, if not with Crosby or Malkin, and we saw what happened with him. So yeah, just wanted to throw that out there. But yeah, I'm really into Pearson or Simone or anyone playing with Crosby or Malkin because they're just so good, and that's been the story for years and years and years. Okay. Well, let's try here. Ryan, are you there? Let me just message him, and because that's how sometimes people communicate.
Did you unmute him, Elon?
Oh, shoot. No, but he's muted and I can't unmute him.
Oh, no.
It's not letting me.
Well, shout out to Chris in the chat for troubleshooting that with us.
Okay, let me get my phone so I can text him. 1 sec.
Okay. Any questions in the chat? So Kevin actually asked a question. He said, would you try to sell high on Eric Gustafsson or ride the Goose train all the way to the playoffs? He seems to be in there in Chicago. Like, and as I started to write you, like, we get some questions often, like, should I sell high? I'm trying to remember. There was one today that Elon asked, or I might be getting to later in the show. I can't remember. Oh, maybe it's Donskoy. No, I don't remember. Sorry. But the question is like Eric Gustafsson, not a lot of marquee value in that name. So how high can you really sell him? Like you'll need to first have someone in your league who's really excited about Eric Gustafsson. And I just don't know who that's going to be. I think you'd be hard pressed to find anybody who's like at least any defenseman who's going to get you more than 40 points in return from him. If you can, I'd probably go for it. Like 45 points to be safe. But I think that's like you could like selling high is like, yeah, a great strategy, but you need a buyer. So that's my concern about someone like Eric Gustafsson.
He's great. Don't sell him.
Oh yeah. So he absolutely is. Yeah. I sort of take back. Well, you don't know what I said, but you do disagree. Cause I said, if you can get like a 45-point defenseman back for him, go for it.
Nah. Hey,
but
Brian,
I think
are you here?
That might be a little low.
I am. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can. Sorry about that. It didn't let me. The system, it was like bad grade. I don't know.
All
Google,
good.
It's this billion-dollar company. They can't get this mute button to work.
No problem.
Okay, thanks so much for joining. So yeah, I guess I'll just introduce you now, and then we'll just get into it and see how it goes. I'm kind of excited for this. It's like a blind item.
I like it.
Okay, so let me just get going again here. Okay, and Brian, before we get down to some more unknown, surprising players that... Okay, actually, wait, what? I still don't even know the name of this segment that we've been doing. Sorry. Okay, Brian, let's take a little bit of a break from talking about some of these lesser-known players because we've got an amazing guest joining us on the call right now. His name is Ryan Bolta, and he's a content producer for a show that we've all been watching for years and years, TSN's That's Hockey. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
No problem, guys. How's it going?
Yeah, it's really good. We're just talking some fantasy hockey. Brian thinks that Tanner Pearson and Dominic Simone are going to tear up the NHL.
Is that what I said?
I think that's what he said.
I got to catch a little bit of the end of your guys' segment that was going there, and when you guys are pitching more unknown names later. I don't know how much more unknown than you guys can get than the path that you guys are going down.
Yeah.
You guys dig pretty deep. I like it.
Normally, we actually go with more known players, but sometimes when you're
Oh,
playing
you have to
fantasy
say,
hockey,
Elon, you have to say that again. Normally.
Ryan, normally we talk about more known players, but all these people are owned by people on their fantasy teams right now. So we're trying to, make some deep cuts here. But okay, so maybe can you just tell our listeners a little bit about like what you do for TSN? Like we chatted on the phone and it was so interesting to me how you're like putting these stories and segments together. Would you mind like giving us like a quick couple minute, rundown?
Yeah, for sure. So I work in essentially it's the That's Hockey office, the TSN hockey office. So our team that puts our show together is there's 5 of us that are there all the time, and then we have a few guys that fill in as well. So anywhere between kind of 6 and 8 of us putting the show together each day. And the show goes to air every night at 7:00. So we come in around 11:30. And we're all pitching ideas, and the producer's building the lineup, and we'll build my job would be to build any of the features and video that you would watch. So general rule when you're watching any like TSN or Sportsnet or any of those shows, if you're not looking at the on-air person, someone wrote it for them. That's usually how it works. So if you can't see the host physically, then someone would have written that story or put together that feature for them. So I'm part of the team that puts those things together. So yeah, we'll be pitching ideas on a bunch of different things. So one of mine that I have in my belt was the Milan Lucic overpaid one that I pitched like 3 years ago. Like the second he signed the contract, took a little bit of time for everyone to warm up.
Yeah, now you can you can probably run it on repeat now.
Yeah. We actually this year they came back and were like, "Hey, want to just update the numbers and like roll through that again?" And I laughed. So my new one that I keep going at is the Carey Price overpaid one, which we haven't settled on a way to tell that one yet, but that might be the next one down the pipeline. But it's cool because I mean we're all weighing in on each other's stories and ideas. It's full of debate. It's kind of I was listening to the two of you go back and forth. Just imagine a room of 8 of you every single day. And we don't always agree, but we end up getting to a good spot with a lot of smart people in the room. And it's cool when you have the former GMs that are there as our analysts, or Mike Johnson, who used to play in the league, or I mean, Dave Reed and Dave Poulin, captains in the league. Some really cool guys that are all around, and Gino Retta, of course, who leads our show. So it's really neat that we go through, and my job specifically is a lot of the writing I'm doing is trying to, like you guys are naming a lot of cool stats as you go. I'm usually trying to find that for the games that night. So I'm trying to give people some tips and trends to focus on. So whether they're betting on the games or they're just interested hockey observers, they got some things to focus on the game that are maybe a little bit less obvious. Because, I mean, everybody knows, like, Bruins Leafs, for example, will obviously hit the fact that, the history that's been there over the last 4 or 5 years. But we might want to dig up some other stats that you start to make you go, okay, this might make some sense, or add some context, or make you think that it might turn around, which it did not. But yeah, it's really cool just to go through every day, and every day I get to go to work and just dive deep into hockey.
Yeah, it sounds like such a dream job. I got to tell you, Ryan. And yeah, I love this idea because we like look into all these stats to talk about players long term. But I'm really into sort of like, when you're watching hockey broadcasts, I guess you're coming up with this stuff like, oh, this player actually is really good against Toronto specifically. So that's like a really good spot for him. Or like this goalie is really good on a back-to-back. So I love that you're finding those stats. And apparently you were telling me, I don't know, this is a stupid thing to say. Wait, sorry, let me say it again. I love hearing about those kinds of stats. And so you're here today and you're going to share some tips and trends that can help you win fantasy. Brian and I have no idea what's coming. And I'm like so excited to hear what you're a producer like yourself who's coming up with this stuff all the time, what you're going to throw at us. And I guess Brian and I will tell you if we agree or disagree. Maybe we'll even have a fun debate at some point. So yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I came up with 3 things, and I know that you guys, obviously you have some educated listeners. People aren't listening to a fantasy hockey podcast if they're not doing well at it. And you guys usually, I'm sure, have laid out a lot of things. So I tried to come up with a few things that might be a little bit different, let's say. But I do like that I didn't send any of them to you, so I get to get your guys' natural take on all of them. I think that's a fun way to go about this. So do you want me to just go we'll start at 1 and you guys can dive in, and does that work?
Yeah, sounds great. Let's start with the first one and see how it goes.
All right. So one thing that I like to do, and this goes for any pool, but we'll stick to hockey for this one, obviously. But number 1 I had written down was identify players with bad press to target. So me personally at work, I'm writing stories that are positive and negative all the time, about a 50-50 split. Lots of them are negative. I mentioned the Lucic one, which his family members wouldn't want to own him in a pool right now, but just an example of a player that's not doing too well. And a lot of times now we talk about whose contracts are bad. But because a player's contract is bad doesn't mean he's not valuable in fantasy, because you're not paying his salary. You're trying to get value from him in a different way. So what I would suggest is use your social media. Everyone's on Twitter. Everyone's on all these different platforms. So be sharing hockey stories all the time, positive and negative. But when you find someone that you want to target that hasn't been very good lately and you think you can find value in, you share those stories. Your buddies are going to see them. You all follow each other. So you pepper in the negative press. You focus on the negative press. When you go to try and trade for a player, you bring up the negative press and you say, I'm kind of interested in player X, but I don't know. I was reading on insert whatever website you got your story from. Let's say it's TSN for the sake of this story. I saw on TSN, I saw on That's Hockey, or I saw on the website that, I don't know, he's not doing so well. So you could try to drive that value down. Because as you guys know, all of these players are just value propositions. Can I get more out of him than I have to pay? You guys earlier were talking a lot of waiver wire pickups. So that's the best. You're paying nothing for them. But in trades, you do have to give something up. So who can you target and how can you knock their price down? So the easiest way that I always found was should be sharing lots of stuff. And then, like I said, kind of filter in the stuff as needed to try and focus on those negatives so that when you go, maybe you could drop the price from $1 to 80 cents by saying, hey, man, I've seen these 2 articles that say Pasternak hasn't been great with Bergeron out, or whatever the story may be.
Yeah, this is genius. I love it. It sounds like psychological warfare almost. Like you're saying, let's say if I want to target Bobrovsky right now in one of my leagues, there's some articles being written now about how, he was suspended internally for that one game. So you don't necessarily don't be too obvious. You're saying like maybe tweet out some articles.
Exactly. Like if you're the guy who, like I said, if all you're doing is going to a guy and being like, hey, I heard Bobrovsky's been terrible. I don't know if I want him, but like, what's the price? That becomes a little bit glaring after a little bit of time. But like I said, people are following your Twitter all the time. I see all of my buddies' tweets all the time. So if they were just trying to filter some information out to me, I probably wouldn't even know it, and I'd come across it.
So this is like
shares and some retweets. So like I said, the Bobrovsky one's a great example, and he's in a different point that I wanted to make later. But same sort of thing. So share some of that stuff. Share the video of Torts going off in the presser ranting about it, or the Kekalainen interview. You can go about it a bunch of different ways. So then when you go to introduce the topic, everyone's well aware of what's going on, that his value might be diminished a little bit.
So
I would try to attack.
I feel like the challenge here would be to be so tactful about it. Like all I'd probably be doing if I tried this strategy was just signaling to everybody who my trade targets are. Like I would not be that good at it. I feel like there's a real like social IQ piece to really know like the ratio of subliminal messaging tweets that you're pumping into your friend's timeline to like just general news. Like 1 out of every 4 is like trying to get at like knocking down the value of a trade target or pumping up the value of one of your own assets. Like I have a guy in one of my leagues who like will come at me with a trade and will tell me exactly why it's such a great trade for me, though. And I'll just be like, no, like that's nonsense.
So that's the thing, right? So that's way too obvious. He's coming at you way too strong.
Yeah, this is it. So what he should do is he should ask me to follow him on Twitter and then like make his feed like a propaganda sort of tool.
So how I would probably do it, and how I have done it in other pools, is I'm sharing things all the time, right? Say you're doing this, you're sharing things all the time.
Yeah.
You share positive things on the guys that you're not actually helping anybody by sharing. Example, I find a positive Connor McDavid article. I'm sending it out there. I'm not really giving anybody information they don't have. Everybody already knew that. So I'm not actually boosting anybody. Everyone knows he's at 100% on your team. I'm not actually helping you. But if I post the positive articles too, and then every once in a while I sprinkle out a negative tweet, or a tweet that, hey, I heard this stat, blah, 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 whatever, and your buddies see it, or you just introduce a chat topic. I'm sure you guys have group chats with the guys in the pool. So it's not as obvious when you're saying, hey, I heard this negative thing about Bobrovsky. If the last couple things you said were, oh my God, did you see this awesome McDavid stat? Or I saw this awesome Austin Matthews stat. Don't go at the guys that you were just talking about, the hidden gems that you're actually keeping an eye on. You don't want to tip people off. But if people start seeing, hey, generally speaking, Brian says a lot of positive stuff, some negative stuff. He actually is bringing up some good ideas here. Then maybe it's just something that you're planting seeds in guys' mind.
Yeah.
Like I said, you don't have to use any of these if you don't think that that's a strategy that you like or that you can pull off. I just kind of like the idea of making sure the news is out there, making sure everyone is aware, and then you could try to manipulate it a bit if you want. Because I'm always looking at the stories of guys on my teams. So if I start seeing the Bobrovsky one's really obvious, everyone's kind of seen that Andy's a multiple-time Vezina winner. But if I owned him right now, I'd be starting to wonder, like, okay, are they going to sit him? Is he going to do something crazy? Are they going to trade him somewhere better? Which way is his value going? It's tough to read.
Yeah, I think it's really funny. I do want to let our listeners know that anything out of the official Keeping Karlsson account is not propaganda. And it's actually...
We are not. This whole podcast is not just a long con to get everybody to join us in the cupful and then win.
Right. Yeah. We're not. Yeah. We made a podcast and then made a league for our podcast just so we could screw over the people in our league. That's for no money.
That's a really long con. I like that.
All right. So very curious to hear your second tip now. The first one was a lot of fun.
Sure. The second one for me is buy pre-trade deadline. So at TSN, we have our trade bait board. I'm sure that they exist all over the internet on guys that could be moved. So identify players that you think will move. And in all likelihood, they're getting traded to a better spot. So you mentioned Bobrovsky. I'm thinking Jonathan Quick as well as another one. I'm trying to figure out who's going to end up in Calgary as their goalie would be one that I think will have a lot of value. But identifying these players and trading for them well before any of this really heats up. If you can grab them, let's say, a month in advance, it's going to be before that value ticks up. So you might be able to buy a player that even if the person trading them thinks they're getting their great value on it, his value is going to change exponentially a month from now down the line. The risk in that is there's a lot less trades now at the deadline. So you might end up getting stuck with Jonathan Quick in Los Angeles and he doesn't go anywhere. And then you might have paid a little bit too much. But if you're active and you grab a bunch of these guys, or you're able to identify the ones that you really want or you really expect to move by looking at their contracts, I use Cap Friendly all the time to try and figure out who's really on the move and where they could be headed. And you guys look a lot at who's going to be playing on power plays and who's going to be playing on whose line, those sorts of situations. If you can try to identify some of that and go ahead, then I'd probably start to try and buy the pre-deadline guys now. So identify maybe 5 targets. You might not be able to get them all. Maybe the person on the other end doesn't want them. But be very, very early in your pre-deadline things. Because once they move, the fact that you want them is the fact that everyone wants them. If Bobrovsky gets traded to Calgary tomorrow, you're already too late. Because when you pay for him, you have to pay the price of him in Calgary. So you want to pay the Columbus price for the Calgary player.
Right. So that's really interesting because I actually thought you were going to go the other way with this and say, like, you don't know what's going to happen to a player's value when they're traded. So if there's somebody who's going to have some hype building up for them to get moved on the deadline and you have, say, Mark Stone or Matt Duchene, and you don't know, maybe more Matt Duchene, you don't know if he's going to be a number 1 center on whatever team that he does get moved to because they're likely going to be a playoff contender or a Stanley Cup contender, then maybe you get out from him now. Like, you know exactly what he's worth now. You can even make like a parallel trade, and all you're doing is trying to hold on to the value that he already offers you. But you were actually saying the inverse, right? Which was like, go and get the guys who are going to move teams, because once they move teams, everyone's going to be super pumped about them and their price goes up.
Yeah, well, it sounds to me like you do either, right? It's like you have to come up with your best guess of if a player's value is going to go up or down. And then you're saying, Ryan, think about this now. Don't wait till when everyone's talking about it in a month. Now's the time to start thinking about who's going to get traded and what are the chances that their value goes up or down.
Part of it is an evaluation of your own roster, too. If you're in a spot, let's say, where, let's say you're in a 12-team league and you're in 6th, you're looking for a home run. So status quo is not going to get you there. So you might be in home run mode where I'd be more aggressive on the strategy that I just explained because you're trying to make up ground. If you're in a money spot, let's say, or you're in 1st or 2nd, you might be more liable to go the other way and just be trying to hold your position and deal with more what you know than the what if scenario. But if I'm in 6th or 7th and I'm trying to make one last climb back in, that's, I think, the easiest way that you can attack players that will well outperform their value. Because generally speaking, people know what their own people are worth. So it's tough to go to a guy right now and say, hey, I love Johnny Gaudreau. Like you guys said when we were talking earlier, you're like, everybody knows who the good players are. You're never going to get value on him as good as he is. you're going to have to pay every dollar he's worth. So you're trying to find someone that you can pay 50 cents for that ends up being worth way more. But to Brian's point, if you're already in first place, don't take those risks. Let everybody else take those risks, and maybe they hit, maybe they don't. But if you're a mid-tier guy, I'd be trying to be really proactive and try to look a month from now. So another one, without dealing with the trade deadline necessarily, which everyone's been trying to do all year, is who's going to finally stick on Connor McDavid's wing. If you could try to figure that out, or if you start hearing rumblings of a trade rumor, maybe of them bringing somebody in, attack that in advance, because you might not pay very high for a guy, but if any of the three of us ended up on his wing, we'd put points up.
That's true.
So you're trying to identify those guys, those lottery tickets, right? So Calgary's goalie, I've identified as a lottery ticket. Connor McDavid's wing, lottery ticket. So is it likely that you find the right guy that ends up there? Maybe not. But if you're in the middle of your pool looking to hit a home run to get yourself up into the money, you kind of have to take that risk. So that's kind of how I would be doing it. But I found in any pools that I was in, people waited way too close to the deadline, and they started waiting until trades were already complete or imminent. And then by that point, everyone's aware of what's going on, so the value's already moved.
Yeah, I kind of like this idea. What I like about it is you're saying, like, I especially like what you're saying about how, like, if you're doing well, don't worry about it. But if you're losing and you really need to shake things up, the best maybe lottery ticket, like, chance to improve is take a shot on some guys that might have value improvements at the trade deadline, but you get them for their value now. So I'll throw out some names of players who are going to be unrestricted free agents at the end of the season. And then, people could think about whether these are players that are likely to be traded or not. And like Brian and I try not to get into too much speculation because a lot of it doesn't end up coming true, but some names to maybe think about. You got Bobrovsky, of course, Mark Stone, Erik Karlsson, but he's not going anywhere. Sharks are going to win the cup this year. That's why I'm wearing this hat. Artemi Panarin, Duchesne, Eberle, Joe Pavelski, Varlamov, Jeff Skinner, though I think is going to stick on Buffalo. So those are some names to think about. Jimmy Howard might get moved. Maybe he becomes the Calgary goalie. I don't know. Derek Brassard. Alex Edler actually is an interesting guy who's going to be a UFA, and Vancouver isn't looking to contend. So those are some names to think about. And yeah, I like that tip. And so did you just throw... Oh, by the way, another name I'll mention, or another thing to think about here, is if, for example, Bobrovsky gets traded, that also means something good. Like if they don't get another goalie back, all of a sudden Joonas Korpisalo would become the starting goalie on Columbus. And we've seen over the past couple of games what that might look like. And not too bad. Columbus is a pretty good team. They've got some good defensemen there in Seth Jones and Werenski. And like I feel like having a goalie there would be good. So keep your eye also on someone like Korpisalo. Maybe you add him now, waiting for the potential, even if it's only like a 25% chance, but maybe he's the starting goalie in a month. So who knows? Okay, you got one more tip for us, Ryan?
I do. The most likely one that I think you guys might fight me on. We'll have some fun here. Number 3 has 2 parts. Be busy. That I think we all agree with. If you're listening to this podcast, you're obviously interested in making a lot of moves and finding the gems. So be busy, we all agree with. The second half, lose moves. Brian mentioned the guy in his pool, and he said that, he always comes at him really aggressively, and he's shied away from wanting to deal with that person in trades. We all have those guys in our pool that we don't want to talk to anymore. Be okay with losing moves to the right people in your pool. If there are guys that are always in the bottom 3 and always in the bottom 4 that are susceptible to losing trades, you're okay to lose 1 or 2 to them. So if you identify someone on your team that if you're in a keeper league, you have a guy that's not a long-term keeper, lose him in a deal to the guys in the bottom. Be okay with losing a deal. I'm not saying throw him away in something that's really obvious, but be okay with taking a risk maybe and making a deal that person wins off of you, because now you're building a relationship with this person over the years that your pool have gone on, that when you talk to him next time, you get to go to him and say, I like us dealing with each other. We both take it honestly. I've won some. You've won some. Remember when I gave you player X, you robbed me of that guy. Now I'm interested in this person. And they're not going to be shy to deal with you, because they're going to think back to, hey, I got player X that time from him, so he's playing this straight up with me. He's not like the guy that Brian mentioned that just comes at me and explains how awesome this is for me, and it never works out for me. So I'm not saying you intentionally lose deals, but try to deal with them a little bit more often. If you have a player that you're okay with getting rid of, if you realize you're not a money team and you have a non-keeper, funnel him to one of the guys at the bottom so you could use him as your example down the line that said, hey, remember when I gave you Hyman, and then he was on that great stretch with Matthews and stuff, and oh man, you got me that time. And then I got you this time. But then when you're talking over beers, you're talking over making a trade, they feel like you guys both have a chance of winning the deal. Because if I made 5 deals in a row with either one of you and you beat me all 5 times, guess what? I'm not doing the 6th time. Talking to either one of you. You need to build these relationships where you know, we're all trying to find the Peter Chiarelli in our pool.
Right.
So
Yeah.
if you identify him, but if you just rob Chiarelli 3 times, guess what? He's not calling you on the 4th.
Well,
So
let's not give Peter Chiarelli too much credit.
Yeah, no, exactly. But yeah, and like I said, it might not be outright losing and you're not maybe making something super obvious, but make really fair deals. You don't have to try and that's the other part of this. You don't have to hit a home run on every trade you make. Even if there's someone on the bottom of the pool that you think that you might be able to take a little bit of an advantage of because you listen to this podcast and you do a lot more research and you might know something that they don't. I mean, you don't necessarily need to go for the absolute home run. Would you rather hit 5 triples or 1 home run? Do you know what I mean? Like I had a guy in one of my hockey pools. I robbed him of Ray Emery like 8 years ago. We've never made a trade since. Not once has he ever, because you just remember he lost that trade. He got made fun of till the end of the year. And it's now just I'm never talking to him about trade again. So I crushed him on that deal and it helped me that year. But did I win or lose? Because now he's still making deals with everybody else. And then I'm out here and I can't make deals with them. So you just need to find that balance between maybe you funnel a guy down to them or maybe you just don't rob them and you make sure that you make some 50-50 deals that you can point to as your example when you end up making the big deal that you really want.
Okay, so you're saying I totally agree. Like it's all about building relationships the whole way through the season so that when you do get to a point where you need to make a big move, you've got people who've had some positive interactions with you and you can go back to that well and try and make something happen. Like so you're doing a lot of pre-work to set them up, and then when you're ready to knock them down, you try and go grab that big deal. And I hear what you're saying too about like essentially just massaging these relationships so they work in your favor. And also what you said about being ready to lose a trade, I think that's a really big deal in when you're making a trade. It's very rare in a competitive league that you're ever going to get like a straight up win. And I think some of the best GMs or fantasy GMs know that there's a chance they're going to lose any deal they make. Like they're not going to get a sure thing, but sometimes the risk that you take is worth it for the payoff. And sometimes it doesn't pay off. And if maybe you can do some depth deals with some of the bottom feeding teams that you know you might be able to pull some better players off of later in the season, like, you know, your 3rd worst guy for their 4th worst guy, or I guess 2nd worst guy. Like in any case, like doing a slight downgrade for one of your non-important pieces that could just help you set things up later in the season. I like it.
Or if you've identified somebody that, I mean, you guys do a lot of deep digging. You guys are looking at who guys are playing coming up and stuff like that. Some things that other guys may not know. So if you watch a guy on your team that's trending okay, but you're okay with getting rid of him because you realize that it's probably maybe, you know, it's not going that well for this much longer. You guys mentioned Bobby Ryan. If you own Bobby Ryan right now, how much longer is this going to go on for? So maybe you identify him as a piece that I'm okay with giving him away. And if it does last for another 2 weeks instead of 2 games, then whatever, he got himself a big name. So then you look to the bottom pool, try and make a deal. And like I said, you're just buying yourself equity for later. And they're not all scams. You can genuinely build those relationships. You said build relationships. You're genuinely trying to build them so that you're coming across as a nice guy. Everyone's irritated by the guy in their pool that only talks bad about your guys, only talks good about his guys, and only comes at you with really one-sided deals.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Nobody wants to talk to that guy ever. Everyone feels the same way. So you want to be the guy that if someone wants to make a trade, they want to pick up the phone and be like, hey, Elon, I got a deal. Like, what do you think about this?
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I like this idea of like, if I have Bobby Ryan and I'm planning maybe on dropping him for someone else anyways, but he's on this hot streak, why not just message someone and be like, hey, I'll give him to you for like some garbage, something you don't even want, you know?
And then you drop the garbage for whatever you want 3 days later. You text the guy that you traded with and you go, dude, you robbed me. I thought I was getting something out of player Y that I got from you for Bobby Ryan. He was trash. I'm going to remember this next time. So
this is so funny.
Now, when you message him, you bring up, okay, I need you not to do the Bobby Ryan thing to me again, but I'm interested in a player on your team. So you now have this funny thing that you can go back to, and you're not always on the winning end.
Yeah, this reminds me
those guys are just trying to have fun like everybody else, right? But you might be able to, you know, manipulate things a little bit that you're the person that comes to mind when they do say, okay, I'm going to trade this player whose contract is coming up in my keeper league, so let me try to do this.
Yeah, it's reminding me a lot of my older days playing like Settlers of Catan, and I had like my same roommates in school that I played games with over and over again. It's like I didn't want to like always steal from the same person because then I knew that over time they would never trade with me. Sounds like the
Yeah.
same thing. It's almost like a prisoner's dilemma thing. Like the longer the relationship lasts, the more often you need to not steal from them. I like it. I like this idea of trading away the players you want to drop and making the other person feel like they got a good deal. It's very clever. Okay, I wanted to disagree with you more. But no, I think these are all fun ideas. Thanks so much for sharing them. And how about Ryan? Do you want to stick with us while we go through the rest of the players we had queued up for today's show?
Yeah, sure. I'll see if I can toss anything in there.
All right, so where was I here? We just talked about the Penguins and Marcus Pettersson and those people. Okay, let's go to San Jose now. Here's another player who's been scorching that no one expected much from going into the season. Joonas Donskoi has been on a line with Tomas Hertl and Evander Kane, and he was riding a streak of 8 goals and 2 assists in his previous 8 games going into yesterday's game versus Ottawa. Unfortunately, he actually left yesterday's game with an upper body injury and didn't return, so we'll have to wait and see if the injury is serious or not. But I guess regardless, I'm curious to know, Brian, what do you think of this run? Is this something sustainable? Those are pretty good line mates. Joonas Donskoi went on decent runs last year as well. I remember he had trouble though getting injured right when he was on good runs. Unfortunately, it's happening again. But if he's healthy, do you think it's time for people to jump on? And if not, maybe he's someone you stash for when he will be available. So maybe Brian, you could give your answer then afterwards, so we could see what Brian thinks.
Well, yeah. Joonas Donskoi and Evander Kane have been on fire lately. The question is, who's pulling or pushing who? First off, let's take a moment to recognize Evander Kane, who had a real dry spell through all of November. People were asking us if he should be dropped. He's been a point per game player in his last 18 games, 9 goals, 9 assists for 18 points in that stretch with 59 shots, so still averaging over 3 shots per game. And Donskoi has been there with him for all of that. But again, the question is, who's benefiting from who? Since November 29th, Joonas Donskoi has 8 goals in 8 games, and Evander Kane has picked up the assist on 5 of those 8 goals. The thing is about Donskoi's 8 goals is that they've come on 16 shots. So he's scoring half the time he puts a puck on net. So that's to say, enjoy Donskoi while he's hot, but I don't think we're looking at a new lineup mainstay here for your fantasy roster. Also, I don't think we're looking at a point per game Evander Kane either. So keep that in mind. Still a very good Evander Kane, but not quite point per game. But that doesn't mean that Donskoi hasn't been a great streamer all year. And that's how you should continue to consider him if he's available on a day where you can get an extra game played and you've got the moves to make. He's been really worth a stream more often than not throughout this season. So yeah, don't expect Donskoi to keep scoring on 1 out of every 2 shots he takes, but expect him to contribute irregularly enough to still be worth streaming into your lineup every so often.
Yeah, I feel like San Jose is turning into one of those teams that kind of has a top 9. You've got good players on 3 of their lines, so that allows people like Joonas Donskoi to produce because they've got Couture on one line, Joe Thornton on another, and Timo Meier is playing with Couture. And anyway, you know what I'm talking about. And Donskoi, yeah, has been in a good spot, and I'm curious to see what will happen when he comes back. Obviously, he's not going to keep scoring on so many of his shots, but still really good.
One thing I'd add on him there is when you go through the numbers, he's played more than 13 minutes twice in the last 10 games. Now, the last one he did get injured, but he likely wasn't headed to beat that clip either. So it's a lot of production with a little bit of ice time. So you need to weigh the back and forth and decide, is the coach going to see that and give him a little bit more ice time to run with? Or is it more likely that this is probably maybe a little bit of puck luck? I do like the connection with Evander Kane. I think Evander Kane's very good. I don't know if he's a point per game like Brian mentioned, but I do really like him as a player. But Donskoi might be a really, really, really deep play if you need one, or probably just think that you'd be buying what happened in the past more than what you think is going to happen in the future.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, the ice time thing is a very good point. Obviously, you want to have a player that's playing in a more sustainable role. Though, if he's playing with Evander Kane, maybe that's a good chance that Kane is able to get points sometimes with not that much ice time. Bummer for him that he hasn't been getting the top power play time that maybe we were expecting going into the season. Okay, but if you think that Donskoi is a deep cut, how about this one? How about Michael Frolik over on Calgary? He actually got back on the Backlund Tkachuk line on Friday. He had been toiling in the bottom 6 for a little bit, and he took full advantage. He scored a goal and assisted on 2 others versus the Florida Panthers, sad Roberto Luongo as he's turned out to be. This was actually Frolik's 2nd straight game with a goal, and he now goes into today's game riding a 4-goal and 4-assist in his last 7 games run. So Michael Frolik has been hot, and Calgary plays Wednesday, Friday, Saturday of next week. So Brian, like, do you think that Frolik makes for a good midweek stream, just like a couple of these other guys, these Ottawa guys have been talking about? Because a lot of people are going to have room on their roster on Wednesday and Friday and are going to maybe have to, bench a player on Tuesday or Saturday. So maybe you drop that guy, get Frolik, get a couple of games. Think he can keep this hot streak going while he's playing on the second line?
Michael Frolik has had a really strange year. He was healthy scratched earlier this season, which is not something that happens to Michael Frolik. And then he saw his ice time dip under 10 minutes for a while. And on the whole, he's been seeing 4 or 5 minutes less of ice per game compared to the last couple years. Like, I don't know what Michael Frolik did to Bill Peters or his family, but it must have been bad. Anyway, Michael Frolik's agent had clearly had enough of this. And Alan Walsh tweeted about how Frolik wasn't playing enough. This was on New Year's Eve. And lo and behold, soon after that, Frolik got a bump in deployment and ice time, got back together with Tkachuk and Backlund for most of the last 8 games since, and there have been great results, both in Frolik scoring, but that's not actually what he's on that second line for. Frolik is on that second line because he's one of the best two-way players the Calgary lineup has, and you can clearly see how much better Tkachuk and Backlund fare in shot attempt share with Frolik on their line than when they're without him. So Frolik, because he's playing up there, getting top 6 minutes with Matthew Tkachuk, makes him a really good stream. And Elon, you make a good point about goal scoring in Calgary, which we kind of made last week, which is that they score so many goals. So whoever's playing enough minutes is going to get in on them every so often. So it's always worth a shot to stream in Michael Frolik. Just keep your expectations tempered. He's the least offensive player in their top 6.
I like the idea that, he's plus 10. Bill Peters really appreciates, like you mentioned, his two-way game. So I think that his run up in this part of the lineup might be longer than people might expect. You're getting just an unreal amount of offense out of that top line. So if you're Bill Peters, you're looking for that second line to absolutely contribute, but you're just trying to beat the other team. You're not trying to outscore them as aggressively as you would if you didn't have that best top line in hockey, or second best top line, probably behind the Avalanche's top line. But I think that Frolik could stay there for a little bit and pick up some decent points just based on opportunity, based on playing the other team's second best pairings, other than, the ones that are wasting a lot of their energy on that top unit. I think he's a decent play. I like him a lot more than the first one you mentioned, Elon.
Okay, so Frolik over Joonas Donskoi, and let's see how you'll compare. Okay, this is a guy I'll bet has been talked about on TSN a lot. He's been all over like our Twitter feed and Facebook group. Like, everyone's talking about what's going on with Brandon Peary. So he was a nobody before, like a few weeks ago. Now he's on everyone's mind because this guy is on fire, and he's been going through a saga because he keeps on getting called up and sent down. I think it's been like 10,000 times since last week that Brandon Peary's been up and down from the minors and then back to the Vegas top line and like top power play. But overall, we're talking about a guy who now has 11 points in 10 games. And with Riley Smith injured, Brandon Peary took a turn on line 1 with Marchessault Karlsson yesterday. He seems to be fitting right in. And also he's been seeing top power play time. And like, why not? Like, Brandon Peary keeps getting points. Why not give him all the opportunities? The thing is, we still don't know like where he fits in once everyone in the original Vegas top 6 is healthy. Like the top 6 we expected going into the year. There's always either been Stastny injured or Pacioretty injured, and now Riley Smith injured. But like, I wonder if they're going to find a way to make room for Brandon Peary. He just got left wing eligibility on Yahoo, so that makes him a lot easier to roster in a lot of formats. And he's running out of games where he can be sent down without having to clear waivers. So I'm curious to know what you guys think. Like, is it now time for people to finally grab Brandon Peary out of free agency if he's still out there, like before it's too late and you regret it for the rest of the season when he continues to be a point per game guy all the way through? Or is he the type of guy who maybe if you do have him now, is now the time to sell high just because eventually once Vegas is fully healthy, there's a good chance that he'll end up getting dropped and be a bottom sixer?
If you're wondering whether or not now is the time to pick up Brandon Peary, I feel like you've probably missed the boat. Like, I feel like he's been snapped up, and even if he was dropped when he was sent down on paper, at least one of the couple times that's happened in the last week or so. I forget how I started that sentence. If he was dropped, okay. Then he's probably been re-added again since then. So look, if Brandon Peary happens to be available, or if you're a Peary owner, as I am in one of my leagues, look, he's always a risk to get sent down because he's got the most flexible two-way contract of anybody Vegas does not want to lose from their roster through waivers. So the question is, how tolerant will you be if for that reason Brandon Peary gets sent down again at some point or misses a game here and there? If you can handle that, I think it's worth it. If you can't, shop around, I guess, see if anyone in your league is a believer that he can continue this 90-point pace he's on. Like, I would happily take any player who's going to get you like 55 points for the rest of the season. That's like a sort of a standard statement. Like, it depends on your league and what kind of free agents are available. But if you can find somebody who's, say, I don't know, 5-10 points better than the top free agent in free agency right now, I would happily swap out Brandon Peary and the risk of Brandon Peary getting sent down for that player.
But don't forget, Brian, like I said, they can't send him down forever. Once he plays apparently, like, he has like 1 or 2 more games, and then they can't send him down anymore.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the bet you're making, though, right? Are they going to give him those couple games? I feel like they are, and then they'll sort it out at the trade deadline or something. But then again, if he does stay up, how long can he stay in the top 6?
So it sounds like you're not a believer. Sounds like you're saying he's not going to be able to keep this up and get rid of him.
So I like Brandon Peary, and I mean, we've had this conversation on the show where it's like, we believe he can do something if he's given the minutes in deployment. It's just a matter, I don't know that Vegas has the minutes in deployment to give him. Once Riley Smith is healthy, their top 6 is pretty full.
I wrote the story when he first came up that he had 8 goals in 8 games and played with Vegas, and he kept getting sent back down. Now he's up, and you mentioned the 11 points. I kind of look at the easier sales pitch. If you are selling the guy, he has 10 goals in 11 career games with Vegas. So if he plays, he scores. So it's a very attractive looking thing to just say, how is this guy not going to get some more run? At some point, you need to look at him and be like, you'd think that Gerard Gallant looks and says, hey, I kind of got to keep this guy out there somewhere. One other attractive piece, a lot of times we do the top 6, bottom 6 thing. I think that Vegas, due to the expansion thing, it's a lot less clear cut than a lot of other teams. Think like the Maple Leafs, super clear, Matthews line, Marner line, and then it really kind of, you get the Kadri and the drop off, and you could really clearly identify. In Vegas, you do have that good top unit, but everything does kind of blend together a little bit more nicely in that they have kind of a lot of similar players. So I feel like he fits in there a little bit better. And if he keeps scoring every time he laces up his skates, you'd think he'd get a little bit more play. How do you send a guy down that has 11 points in 10 games? I really think they'll try and find a spot for him. I'd be intrigued anyway if I was their coach, a fan, a teammate. It's also plus 11 in those 11 games. Sorry, in those 10 games. So he's doing it on the defensive end too.
Yeah.
I like him. Obviously a gamble, but to what I was explaining earlier, of trying to get guys in a little earlier. Brian mentioned you might have missed the boat on being early on him, but I think that you're still there where you could get some value if you could get him on the moderately priced end.
Yeah, and I also think, Ryan, you bring up a good point about, like, maybe we don't need to be so, like, stuck with this top 6 idea. Like, maybe they could become a top 9 team. Maybe they could split it up. Like, maybe they could have, like, Paul Stastny centering Pacioretty and, like, whoever, like, get Cody Eakin there, and then have Brandon Peary playing with Alex Tuck. Like, maybe you take, like, 2 good pieces out of those 4 good guys who could potentially be on the second line, like, Stastny, Pacioretty, and Tuck, and Brandon Peary. Maybe split them into 2 lines. Like, I think there is a way where Peary could still be a big part of the offense, and it looks like Vegas has been sort of going with 2 power play units lately. Like, in the last game, they had William Karlsson and Marchessault on 1 power play unit, and then they had Pacioretty, Peary, Stastny, and Tuck on the other one. So this could be a situation where they'll find a way for Peary to still be an offensive contributor, and I'd be holding on right now. I don't think you can get so much for him in a trade, so I actually think if I could get him right now, I would hold him, and I'm expecting him to be able to have an opportunity. Like, they've seen that he could help them win.
Elon, can I ask, what would you give up to acquire Brandon Peary if he's owned by another team? Like, would you trade for him?
Yeah, so, like, I don't know. Like, I guess I have to look at my roster and see. Like, I'd have to get the offer. Like, I think that he's a guy who it would be really fun to take a flyer on right now, because, like, now's still the time when no one's going to believe on him. Like, they're going to be like you. So obviously I'm not going to trade like Vladimir Tarasenko to get Brandon Peary. But if I'm getting an offer, I don't know. Like, Brian, how about like Furland? Is that like a good comparison?
Top line Furland is pretty hard to give up.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know. So I guess I'll tweet at us at Kevin Karlsson. I'll be curious to know what people think. I don't know. I have a hunch that Peary's going to stay in, and they'll find a way to get him on a decent line somehow. And by the way, speaking of Furlan, Mr. Incorrectly spelled first name, Michael Furlan with the E before the A for some reason, he is back on the top line for the Hurricanes with Aho and Teravainen. He cemented his return to that spot with a big 1 goal, 2 assists, +4 game on Friday versus the Sabres. He's obviously not a nobody. Like, he had a tremendous start to the season, but he may have been dropped to free agency in shallower leagues. He had gone cold for a little bit and was off the top line, like I said. Obviously you're saying you like him a lot more than Brandon Peary, so he's obviously, you have to scoop up Michael Furlan right now. It's not even a question. Like, I'll just say it and then you could concur, you guys. And also I should mention that Justin Williams on Carolina is currently riding a 4-game goal streak and a 6-game point streak, so he and Michael Furlan are really going well right now for Carolina. And I believe Carolina won today, or they're still going. They're up 5-2.
Williams scored, so it's now a 5-game goal streak. So Justin Williams is on a real roll here, and he's going into today. He had 25 shots in his last 7 games, which is paying dividends for goal scoring. So Justin Williams, a great ad, especially if shots are counted in your format. Elon, I didn't say that I like Furlan a lot more than Brandon Peary. I think each guy has a similar chance of being left out of their top 6 at some point, and I think both guys being left out of their top 6 are in some measure of trouble, although maybe Brandon Peary I could trust a little more if he's playing on the third line to try and score a goal rather than Michael Furlan to pick up a point. But there's a pretty good chance that Furlan might have been dropped in your league when he was bumped off the top line, got injured, came back, was still off the top line. So check your free agency lists and grab him for as long as he's there. And of course, this means that neither Svechnikov nor Brock McGinn are still on that top line.
If I can chime in for a sec, Furland is on our TSN lists really likely to be dealt at the deadline. Pierre LeBrun was saying this week that they're shopping him. He's on the trade market. So when I was going on my try and be in early on guys who could move to good situations, he'd be one that, A, I believe he's going to move, and B, like you guys said, I don't think the price is very high. He could even be available on your waiver wire. So he would be a person that I would target because you never know. And if he ends up in a spot where he ends up on a really deep team and he's playing third and fourth line minutes, you can always get rid of him, and it didn't cost you very much to get him. But who knows where he ends up, and he might end up with a decent spot in a really good lineup. But I do believe he's definitely headed somewhere before the trade deadline.
So even if he does move, though, it's hard to imagine. Like, he's playing with Sebastian Aho and Toivo Teravainen. I can't see it getting much better for him. Although we did say that when he left Calgary and was playing with Gaudreau and Monahan, it's like, well, Calgary used him as a top line player. I wouldn't expect Carolina to, and sure enough, he ended up there. So maybe another team will see that also. But I would also imagine that a playoff contending team, that's the thing with players who are being traded to other playoff contenders. It's like, these are Stanley Cup potential winning teams. They don't have many holes in their lineup, so I wouldn't expect there to be a hole on some team's top line for Michael Furlan to jump into. So I'm actually going to take the tack if I'm a Furlan owner, and like, let's say I 100% know he's going to get dealt, but I don't know where. I'm trying to offload him while he's playing with Aho and Teravainen.
Yeah, I think I might agree. I like the spirit of your suggestion, Ryan. Like, it's really useful to know that he's going to get traded. But I feel like, yeah, if another team's acquiring him, it's probably for more of a depth piece. But yeah, it's really interesting. If that's going to happen, then it does make me think that maybe you want to dump Furlan, especially like he had another good game today, 2 assists. And yeah, I guess Carolina's probably not going to make the playoffs again because of goaltending. So either Curtis McElhinney's been good, but yeah, maybe he'll get traded just because he's going to be a free agent. Interesting. That wasn't on my radar at all. So that's cool.
I actually saw today that like maybe he's going to go to back to Calgary, which is weird, but okay.
If he bumps Elias Lindholm, Brian,
could you imagine?
I would be so mad. He's like carrying me. All right. So sorry about that. I guess at this point we need to go into a bit of a lightning round because we have like about 10 minutes left to go. So maybe it would be a good time to sign off for Ryan because I don't want you to have to like run off right while we're in the middle of still trying to get through players. So,
no problem, guys. I had a lot of fun.
So here, but let me do an official thanks so much for joining and all of that, and then you could like tell your Twitter or like anything. Like, is there anything specific, or maybe I'll just like throw to you and you could like sort of say anything you want to say about people following you and stuff like that.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I'll go. One sec here. Okay, so Brian, before Okay, so Brian and Ryan, before we get to some injuries and outjuries, a little lightning round to close out the show, I want to take a second to really thank you so much, Ryan, for joining us. This was a lot of fun. Your tips and tricks, I didn't expect it to go in that direction of like sort of this psychological, like how to manipulate people, and I love it. That's a fun part of fantasy that I feel like a lot of people don't think about. So thank you so much for joining and also sharing some of your insight on all of these players. So Ryan Bolta, can you tell people like how they can follow you, like anything you want to promote before you go?
Yeah, for sure. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at @IamBolta. And I guess the easiest way to follow any of what I'm doing is just tune in to 7-Eleven That's Hockey. It's every night. If you're on the East Coast, it's at 7 p.m. on TSN. You can find us.
Awesome. Yeah. If I had cable, I would definitely be watching. There must be a way for me to download the show or something and
lots of our segments go up on tsn.ca too. A lot of our big features and our hits and stuff like that. So you can watch a ton of it there as well.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, so tsn.ca, obviously a great site. Thank you so much again for joining us. Have a great dinner tonight. I know you have to go prepare for a big fancy dinner. So
I'm playing Iron Chef out in the backyard barbecuing midwinter. So hopefully we do okay.
Oh God. Okay. Well, good luck with that. I hope you don't freeze. And yeah, thanks again. This was really great.
Enjoy, fellas.
Bye. Okay. That was fun.
Elon, you don't have cable?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
How do you watch hockey?
I have NHL Game Center. Okay, yeah, I'll say that actually on the show. Oh,
I'll say it on the show.
Okay. So do you want to jump in now?
Yeah, I'll just start and then we'll roll.
Yeah, we'll roll through it all.
Elon, wait, did you just say you don't have cable?
Yes, I don't have cable. I know.
How do you watch? You must not watch hockey games.
Yeah, we once got a negative iTunes review that said that Brian admitted he didn't have cable, so that means he doesn't watch hockey. But no, there are ways to watch hockey without having cable. I actually am a chump. I pay full price for NHL Game Center. I'm not using any of these streaming techniques that other people use, and it is very annoying when like a Leafs game is on and I can't watch it because of these, like I'm in the location of the. Well, whatever. I do watch my share of hockey. So yeah, don't give us a 1-star. We also got a 1-star review lately. Brian, is it okay to take a second to rant? Like, by the way, people, like, if you want to help the show at all, we really do appreciate you.
Hang on, just before you do this, there is more content coming. Like, don't turn off the episode. Just bear with us though and listen. Like, actually, I have a funny analogy to go with what I think your rant will be.
Okay, well, sure. Well, yes, we do have a lot of content. Don't turn off the show unless you want to. Actually, do what you want. Live your life, okay? But I will just say that if you wanted to give us a 5-star review on iTunes, that would really help because we got a couple like negative reviews recently, which really hurt my feelings. Like, because they weren't even like, one of them was like, our voices are annoying, which I can't help it. Like, this is my voice, okay? And another one was like, I don't know, like it was a good content, but they talk too much about their insider league. And like, I just kind of feel like when we bring up the cupful, we're trying to give analogies of like strategies. It's not like I'm just like walking through like how my week went. So I don't know, we're trying our best. I feel like if you have negative feedback for the show, tweet at us, like message us. I loved it, constructive feedback. You'll notice we haven't talked about the cupful much today. So I did take that constructive feedback, but at the same time, those negative reviews hurt us. Like you don't need to do it. But
it's also like there's a piece of me like I get it. Like we're putting this thing out there, we're putting it out for critique and scrutiny and whatever anybody makes and puts out to the world, you have to be ready to hear back what people think of it. And that's all part of it. But it makes me think of like when I go to the grocery store, like there's this grocery store that I like nearby and they have free samples there. Like they'll have some cheese out, sometimes they'll have some meat or some sausage or like some chips. And like, if I'm going to go and take a free sample of cheese and I don't like it, I'm not going to go to like the cheese distributor's website and like say how bad the cheese was or like stand next to the sample bowl of cheese and tell everybody who approaches, this cheese isn't good. I didn't like the taste of it. 1 star. Like this is a free thing. Like if you don't like it, like
probably people are going to give us a bad review now for this whiny segment about us. I don't know. Just so you know, we're humans. It hurt our feelings, but we're going to soldier on and still continue to make this show.
Bring it on. Bring on the scrutiny. Actually, this I don't. It doesn't bother me. I think it bothers Elon a lot more than it bothers me.
I'm just like, F you.
Elon loses 3 hours of sleep for every star below 5 given in a review.
Yeah.
So if you leave him a 1-star review, that costs him a whole night of sleep.
Yeah, keep that in mind next time you want to hurt my feelings here. But I'm going to try my best to still make a good show, even though my voice is annoying. Okay, Brian, let's talk about some injuries and outjuries and some weird roster things to close thing out. We talked last week about Cam Fowler and Rickard Rakell. We said how they were going to be returning to the Ducks. Now let's check in and see how they've been doing now that they've actually been playing a couple games on the Anaheim Ducks. So they played yesterday. Sorry. Let me do that again.
And we're gonna we both have to run, so you'll
What do you want to do?
Keep this to like 30 seconds or less,
Okay. Okay, let's end the show with some injuries, outjuries, some weird roster things. Last week we talked about the Ducks and how Cam Fowler and Rickard Rakell would be returning. Let's check in and see how they're doing going into today's game versus Winnipeg. Rickard Rakell has been playing with Getzlaf and Daniel Sprong. So Getzlaf, as we were expecting, top line, top power play. He had an assist and 5 shots in 2 games so far. So not great, not terrible. Probably still a decent buy low, I would think. Like he could probably go off any night. Like Anaheim's just not scoring many goals, so you're not seeing much. Like Cam Fowler actually has been getting big minutes. He's been manning the top power play. He's played 3 games now and has a grand total of 0 points, 1 shot, 1 hit, 2 blocks in 3 games. Boo, Cam Fowler. That's not good at all. I'd be curious to know, do you think that Fowler owners should be panicking? Like, is this face mask thing hindering him? Is it just that the Ducks suck and you don't think it'll happen? Like, he won't be able to do well. Like, they even lost to the Sens. They made Anders Nilsson look good, for goodness sake. So that's not good. So I'm just curious to get your take. Is Cam Fowler done? Or is it just like, whoa, dude, hold your horses, slow down. He's going to be fine. He just got back.
I mean, I've seen this theory that Cam Fowler's face mask is going to hinder him, and like it very well might. I can't tell you if it will or won't. I can tell you that I still think he should end up on a 40-point pace. Maybe he's less likely to block a shot or throw a hit. Maybe there's an adjustment period for learning to play with the face mask. But otherwise, like Cam Fowler has had a 40-point pace in 3 of the 4 seasons that he's had the top power play role for most of the year in Anaheim. So if he holds the top power play role, I expect him to do the same. And also keep in mind, Elon, when you asked me about, was it Rakell last week not scoring, and I pointed out, or Getzlaf, I think it was, and I pointed out how rarely the Ducks score. Since then, they have managed, they got shut out, and then they scored 1 goal, and then they finally scored 4 goals against Pittsburgh, but still 5 goals over 3 games. Not a lot of action for Cam Fowler to get in on necessarily. So let's just wait before totally jumping off the Cam Fowler train.
Yeah, though, I mean, at some point, Brian, you get to a point where you say maybe the fact that Anaheim doesn't score is a bad thing because maybe they won't pick it up. Maybe they're having
Yes.
some actual trouble.
Yeah, that's true. We just need to make sure we're placing the blame in the right area and saying it's not all Cam Fowler, it's also the team he plays for. But you're right. If Anaheim doesn't figure it out, and they're not really on track to doing that, you can expect fewer goals to be coming out of Anaheim.
Yeah, but let's give it at least another week. Let's see how Fowler does next week. I think Anaheim plays like 4 games, so we'll get a good chance to get a bigger sample size here. Mike Green returned to the Red Wings on Friday, another defenseman, no points, but 5 shots. And then yesterday versus Minnesota, he picked up an assist on one of Tyler Bertuzzi's 3 goals. How about that? Tyler Bertuzzi, line 1. Anthony Mantha came back, not on line 1. Tyler Bertuzzi's still there. But anyways, big minutes for Mike Green, just like Cam Fowler. Who would you rather have rest of the season between Mike Green and Cam Fowler?
I'm going to take Mike Green. I think that top power play in Detroit is okay. I mean, they feel pretty similar because Green's got Larkin, Fowler's got Getzlaf, but Green seems more like the only player capable of doing his job in Detroit. Of course, he's a bit more of an injury risk, so be wary of that. And yeah, Tyler Bertuzzi, we talked about him last week. I said you want the guy playing with Larkin, and then he really let me down in his first couple games of the week. But then he scored 3 times on 5 shots for a hat trick, which was great. So hopefully anybody who picked him up on our advice, or my advice, Elon, because I think you went Athanasiou, was able to feel rewarded for following it.
Yeah, but probably if they added Bertuzzi at the start of the week, they probably dropped him before his hat trick yesterday, because yesterday was a super busy Saturday. Who had Tyler Bertuzzi in their lineup? Let us know if you did. You're very smart. Mackenzie Blackwood returned to the Devils yesterday after Keith Kincaid had yet another terrible week, and Blackwood continues his amazing career. Like, it's been a short career so far, but like another gem. He stopped 32 of 34 in a 3-2 win over the Flyers. Goes without question, I think, that Blackwood should be owned in all leagues at this point. I'm not even going to ask you. He's got a .947 save percentage in 9 games. Ay, chihuahua. I'd be curious, who would you take at this point between Blackwood and Jordan Binnington? You already said Binnington over the other goalie, Kemper. So how do you place Blackwood in that ranking?
Blackwood, another goalie who has just been crushing it on the penalty kill. He's stopped 36 of 37 shots faced while shorthanded, but unlike Darcy Kemper, Blackwood is also doing very well at 5-on-5. Between him and Binnington, I don't know. Like, again, we look at who Blackwood has played against recently. Carolina, Vancouver, Dallas, Arizona, Philadelphia. Not the most offensively daunting teams, although Carolina should be, and sometimes they are. It's coming up for New Jersey. Columbus, the Isles, and Pittsburgh are 3 of their next 5 opponents. But Blackwood has played already against Columbus and Boston and did all right. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm trying to take anything away from him or not. I don't mean to. I am going to go... Oh, man. I don't know, Elon. This is a really hard one. Can you go first? Blackwood or Binnington?
Give me Blackwood. I think he's
Why?
like, I don't know, he's been there longer now. Like, he's played more games than Binnington. Like, we're talking like 9 games instead of 3 games. So if I have to pick one right now, and also I just think as bad as Jake Allen has been, I think Keith Kincaid has been worse. Like, I think that Blackwood's probably going to play more games. Like,
Okay.
you know, but it's a coin flip. Like,
Yeah, that's fair. I'm going to go the same direction as you. I'm going to go Blackwood, but it's super close. And I'm going Blackwood for the same reasons you mentioned.
Yeah, this could definitely change. And I think Binnington has higher upside. If you want to like sort of play it a little safe, I'd go Blackwood. But I think Binnington, like I think St. Louis can be a really good team potentially. And you could have a starting goalie on a really good team. But a lot has to go right, of course. Since we're on New Jersey, Marcus Johansson returned from his injury to hopefully continue to meet my very boring projection of a 40-point pace that you talked about in that week when I was away. He jumped right onto the top line with Hischier and Palmieri since Taylor Hall is out. And he went full Fowler. He had no points, no shots, no hits, no blocks, no nothing. All zeros across the board. A nothing game for Marcus Johansson in a game where the Devils won, like scored 3 goals. You think he would have done something. Anyway, still seems like he's in a good spot while Hall is out. And he was putting up like 3, 4, 5 shots in stretches before he got hurt. So it's not as if he's generally a 0-shot guy. Is Marcus Johansson on your radar at all? And also, I feel like I've been asking you this question a lot. Is this person on your radar? Maybe I need a better idiom. So maybe while you answer about Marcus Johansson, you could also let me know a better way to ask this question.
I guess I'm okay with Marcus Johansson doing what he's doing. If he's playing with Hischier and Palmieri, you might as well take a shot at him, although there are better third wheels to be had around the league. But generally still, like Elon, you've nailed your projection on him, 40 points. He's not much more than that for the most part. As for other idioms for under the radar, I would love to hear some listener suggestions. Tweet at us at Keeping Karlsson. Let us know what Elon can say instead of saying, is this guy on your radar at all? The best I could come up with, Elon, is, have you been smelling what he's been cooking?
I'm not going to do that. That's too corny. I see you wrote here in your crosshairs. I like that. I'll go with that. Maybe.
I thought that was cheesy and also like a similar military themed analogy. Like I wanted to try and come up with something totally different.
Well, I'm good with saying one thing per episode. I just don't like to repeat the idiom multiple times in episodes. As long as I have like a collection of them, I can sort of cycle through them. By the way, we had a question in the chat room here from Ben: Blackwood or Carter Hart? That's a very interesting question. I'm going to go Blackwood because Brian Elliott is going to be back for Philly soon. So who knows what happens to Carter Hart? I think Blackwood has a better chance. Speaking of goalies on Washington, Braden Holtby took a stick to the eye yesterday, but it looks like he's fine. So this isn't much of a news item at this point. He's been practicing today. Phoenix Copley, would have been a must add, I would think, if Holtby's going to be out. And Copley, by the way, having a fantastic rookie season, 10 wins, 916 save percentage in 16 games, making Caps fans say Hubauer. Like, no big deal that they lost Grubauer over the summer because Copley seems just as good. And actually, Grubauer is kind of struggling lately in Colorado, as are a lot of Colorado players. Okay, Brian, do you want to comment on that, or should I go to my last couple things?
Phoenix Copley has been good, like Brossoit. I mean, not quite like Brossoit because he hasn't been quite as good, but whenever he starts, you want him. If you know a day ahead or with whatever lead time you need to know, if you see Copley is getting the start, add him to your team. Watching Grubauer struggle in Colorado reminds me of all those Nashville guys that played net, that Barry Trotz coached, and they looked great in Nashville's mustard yellow, but then awful anywhere else in the league. So I'm not saying Grubauer fits this bill, but he did play for Barry Trotz, look really good behind a strong team, and then go to another team where he is seemingly being exposed. But going back to Copley, like I still have
faith. Okay, I can't let this go on. It's Copley. We've said, and we already corrected this in the previous show. You keep saying Copley.
Oh, I thought we corrected it from Copley to Copley.
This is the thing you always do. We correct it, and then you forget. So what's even the point of you learning the thing? Because you'll forget right now.
I just need to remember which one we corrected from.
Just read it. It's Copley.
I read a lot of names and I don't say them right.
It's Copley. Anyways, what about him? He's good, right? Okay.
Yeah, start him when he plaplays.
Start him when he plays.
I also threw out a theory on our patrons only Facebook group that if like down the stretch, Holtby had a lot of rest down the stretch last season. Like, he essentially lost the job because he was playing like garbage, and Grubauer stepped in, but Holtby ended up being the guy who took the Capitals through the playoffs. I wonder if the Capitals remember that and try and take a page out of last year's playbook, even if Holtby's doing okay, and not take him out because he's garbage, but just because, hey, he needs some rest, and Copley seems to be handling his business all right. I wonder if Copley gets a few more starts down the stretch. Something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, he already has been actually playing a lot for a backup. In a lot of my leagues where he's available, he's like the biggest point getter, just because he's been playing a lot, and when he's playing, he's winning games generally. Okay, a couple quick roster things. The Habs finally split up Max Domi and Jonathan Drouin. They'd been on the same line almost the whole season. The line mate had been switching a lot recently, like it was Andrew Shaw for a bit, Paul Byron, Armia was there for a bit, but now they decided, let's just split these guys up completely, because they both had gone cold. Drouin was pointless in 4 before getting an assist yesterday versus Colorado with his new line mates, Philip Dano and Brendan Gallagher, which, by the way, I would say that's a pretty good spot for Phil Dano, who's had some good games lately. And now if he's playing with Drouin and Gallagher, I feel like that, to me, is the new top line over in Montreal. Domi continued his drought, though, yesterday with his new line mates, Arturi Lekin and Joel Armia. He now only has 1 assist in his last 5 games. So, Brian, I wonder if maybe you are going to gloat a little bit now, because you were telling people back when Domi was doing so well that you didn't think it was going to last. It lasted for a while, but he's cold now, and now that he's not playing with Drouin, it's kind of like I'm not as excited about Max Domi. Who knows how long this lasts? Maybe he gets paired back with Drouin again at some point, though they did win 3-0 against Colorado yesterday, so maybe the Habs will keep it going for a little longer. For completion, by the way, Paul Byron, Kotkaniemi, and Thomas Tatar were on the other line for the Habs.
So the question is, I feel like anytime I'm right about something, you always are like, so Brian, you're going to gloat now? And I don't know if that makes people think that I do gloat a lot, or that I don't know. I would definitely say that I was right about Max Domi. We said he would go cold, even when he was at the peak of his hotness, when he was still a point per game player. I hope you sold high when we suggested, as hard as it would have been to do that. If you didn't, you're stuck with a guy who hopefully is going to get you 50, 55 points. If you have Drouin, he's also not going to repeat the first quarter of his season, or at least he's not likely to. So in that case, you're expecting a 55, hopefully 60-point performance in the best case scenario. And then you have Tomas Tatar, who's getting, like, it seems like the Habs are running a top 9 right now, but that Gallagher Drouin line is definitely the one that you want to have players on. I'm not that interested in Domi with Lehkonen and Armia, or Tatar with Byron and Kotkaniemi.
Okay, yeah. And let's end the show right now with a guy who we already talked about a little bit with Ryan Bolta earlier on. But over in Columbus, all this drama with Sergei Bobrovsky, he got suspended for a game, like by the team, like internally suspended, because he apparently didn't come back to the bench after getting pulled versus the Lightning on Tuesday, and they weren't happy about that. So Jonas Korpisalo got the game on Thursday, and someone else like backed him up, and he was good. He stopped 32 of 35 in a 4-3 overtime win over Nashville. And then Korpisalo got the game again yesterday because Columbus has a back-to-back, so Bobrovsky's going to play today, but Korpisalo, good again, by the way. Better. Stopped 32 of 33 in a 2-1 overtime win over the Caps. Bobrovsky will play today versus the Rangers, but there's lots of speculation. Like, you know, like I know, Brian, you don't like to generally get into too many rumors, but like people are asking, right? Like people are saying, oh, what does this mean? Is Bobrovsky maybe on his way out? He is an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season, so maybe he gets traded at the trade deadline. Are you willing to give that any credence? Could we maybe spend like just 2 minutes discussing if we think Bobrovsky would be helped or hurt if he were to move to a new team, and whether people should be preemptively adding Korpisalo, as I suggested earlier on in the show?
You could preemptively add Korpisalo. It does seem weird. Like, I was looking desperately for information about what happened with Bobrovsky and what it means, and it seems like there is a gag order on all Columbus players. Nobody's talking about exactly what happened, but everything's...
I thought we heard. I thought it was because he was like wearing his street clothes when the game hadn't ended after he got pulled.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I didn't see that. Where did you see that?
I just said it. Actually.
Oh, sorry.
And it was written down in our prep document.
I was busy looking up who the Rangers starter was today for a follow-up note on this conversation. But back to Columbus, they are not as contending a team as I think they would have hoped And I would have hoped them to be there. They're kind of right in the middle. Like they should be tracking for a playoff spot, but I don't know how deep they're going to be able to go. Trading Bobrovsky obviously hurts them a lot. One team that I would love to see Bobrovsky go to is Calgary. I don't know if they could or couldn't make room for him if the Columbus Blue Jackets, like essentially if you want Bobrovsky, you're going to need Columbus to buy in on one of your like aging long-term assets like a Mike Smith and think that like and hope somebody in the Columbus organization has some tie to Mike Smith. It's like, oh yeah, I think he's still got some in the tank for us. Or another thought I had, Elon, I'm going to give you one guess. I tweeted this out earlier just before we started recording. I don't know if you saw which team in the NHL has the worst 5-on-5 save percentage.
I didn't see. Is it Florida? I feel like Florida could really use a goalie.
Florida could absolutely use a goalie. You're close. They're 30th in the league. They and 31st are like in a league of their own, like way behind 29th, or at least relatively. The 31st ranked team in 5-on-5 save percentage in the NHL this year is the San Jose Sharks. And you look at the Sharks having Karlsson, like maybe not there for very long, and you want to contend. What are you doing with Martin Jones tending your crease? Like you need to move on from that. You need to try and get out from under that. So if maybe this seems very outlandish because the Sharks don't have a whole lot of flexibility, but perhaps maybe if Columbus likes Martin Jones somehow, they can somehow acquire Sergei Bobrovsky and get the goalie that I think they really need to make them a very serious cup contender. Right now, if they contend for the cup, it'll be in spite of their goaltending. It'd be wonderful if they could do it in concert with their goaltending.
Yeah, Brian, this is like total fan fiction. This is like you nerding it up with some underlying numbers to justify a reason why the Sharks will do something that they absolutely won't do. They've won like 6 games in a row. I don't think they're going to go start giving up pieces to get Sergei Bobrovsky. Like, it's not going to happen. He's not going to the Sharks.
I don't know. Maybe it just won't take. Maybe Columbus just wants to. Yeah, I don't know.
The Sharks are happy.
There.
They're winning games. Like,
yeah, but they shouldn't be happy with their goaltending. League worst.
Yeah, well, at even strength, but he's making up for it the penalty kill.
Is he though?
Well, I mean, they're winning these games. Like one goal.
Like I said, they're doing it in spite of their goaltending.
Hey, they let in 1 goal against Ottawa in their last game, 2 goals against Vegas in the previous, 2 goals against. They've been letting in 1 or 2 goals against in their past like 5 games. So obviously, goaltending is not their concern right now.
Well, when you play Ottawa, it's pretty easy to give up 1 goal against. Also, the note I was talking about the Rangers, I saw whispers earlier today that Alexander Georgiev was going to get the start today, which means that he would be starting. Oh my God, I'm not ready for this.
Okay, you're not ready for this. Yeah, Georgiev has been getting some starts.
Did he start yesterday? That's what I was like. I'm pretty sure it's a back-to-back, is it not, for the Rangers? It is. So he would be starting both halves of a back-to-back. And at this point, I'm like, do the Rangers know that it hurts their tanking choices to start Lundqvist? And Elon, I'm curious to know, what do you think this means for Lundqvist owners? If like this is still an if, we're 2.5 hours away from game time. We still don't know who the goal is. Maybe this will all be moot. But are you at all concerned about Lundqvist's fantasy value? Because I do think the Rangers are hurting their future by playing Henrik Lundqvist today.
I don't know, like how good has Lundqvist even been? Like you're talking about him as if he's like this amazing goalie. I feel like he has definitely lost a step or two or whatever. Maybe no one would be doing well on this Rangers team. I would be concerned about a Lundqvist owner.
Again, maybe no one would be doing well.
Maybe nobody would be doing well on this Rangers team. I'm bringing up Lundqvist's numbers now. He's a .907 save percentage on the season. So yeah, that's pretty good, obvious, especially on this team. But yeah. I don't know, like whatever. I would be concerned as a Lundqvist owner. Yeah, if I'm depending on Henrik Lundqvist for my fantasy team, then I got big problems because I feel like I wouldn't want him as anything more than my like 3rd goalie, like maybe 2nd goalie, but I'd be much more comfortable having him as my 3rd goalie. This Rangers team is bad, and Lundqvist also is like older. He's struggled over the past couple of seasons to be consistent all season long in fantasy, at least. Like, yeah. And now if Georgiev's getting starts, it's just another reason to be concerned. Yeah, that's my take. Okay, so Brian,
good take.
With that, I guess we are done with the show. And yeah, thanks everyone for joining us for this extravaganza of an episode. We went through so much. We talked about all of these players who you might be able to pick up from free agency. We covered the injuries and outros. We had Ryan Bolta give us some fun, sneaky, manipulative tricks that you could try in your fantasy leagues. And now we come to this point where we're going to ask you to help support the show by becoming a patron of Keeping Karlsson. You can go to keepingkarlsson.com/patron, get a bunch of nice perks, and for $5 a month, you can feel so good that you're helping us put out this show every single week to try to help you do well in your fantasy league. So again, that's keepingkarlsson.com/patron. Also, 5-star review on iTunes, always appreciated. But okay, enough of that. Let's go home, Brian. Let's cue the outro music, and why don't you go ahead and read us the credits?
I am home, but I'll do that from home.
I meant to say let's take it home.
Let's bring it on home.
Yeah, that's it. That's the saying.
All right. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by Dauber Hockey and powered by our patrons, including our newest ones, Henrik L. No, not the goalie. Billy F. Maybe the goalie. I don't know. Henry H. and Justin B. This show was researched with help from Dauber Hockey, Frozen Pool, Dauber Prospects, Corsica, Natural Stat Trick, Charting Hockey, Hockey Goalies, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, Hockey Database, Elite Prospects, Roto World, and Yahoo!
Yahoo! Great job as always, Brian. Looking forward to doing this all again with you next Sunday at our regular evening time.
Until then, keep on keeping Karlsson.
Great job. Okay. Boom. That is going to be a bigger edit than usual, but that's okay.
I think we figured it out. No?
Yeah, I guess so.
We got better.
All right. So thanks everyone for joining us for the live show. Really appreciate it. Ben and Christopher have been writing us some nice messages in here for having some fun discussion. And Brian, okay, I'll talk to you in just 1 second. Bye everyone.
Bye everyone. Thank you.